Hello, everyone, and welcome to another collaboration podcast, the Sports Grid Fantasy Football Podcast and the legendary Upside Fantasy Football Podcast. Davis Mattek and Pat Corain with you guys. This is going to be our first sort of discussion of the incoming NFL rookies. We've mentioned them a little bit as we've done shows over the last month, but Pat and I normally do a lot of rookie discussion really over the next 3 months because, unlike our friends, Pat, unlike Peter and unlike Reeves and these guys who just kind of unplug and they're not drafting and they're kind of just living their lives, hanging out with their wives, watching movies, getting some sunlight. You and I are 27 drafts into the big board.
I
We've been
think that's
watching
exactly
film.
how many drafts I'm in. I'm not even kidding. I think
I
I've done
think I think
exactly.
27 might be mine too, which would be really funny. Yeah, they're look, everyone is living their lives. They're watching golf, they're getting some sunlight, and I'm not really doing any of that, honestly. I am I'm watching Dylan Lobb highlights. I'm watching University of New Hampshire running backs. I'm watching the film from the Senior Bowl. I'm trying to get a real opinion of these rookies. I've already got I think like three real hot takes relative to the market. It's an amazing rookie class. I guess that's really just the good place to begin. We are definitely going to have four starting quarterbacks come in from this rookie draft class. I think it's possible we get to six, depending on what ends up happening with Bo Nix and Michael Penix. We've got four wide receivers who are locks to be first round draft picks. I think we could see up to seven wide receivers be first round NFL draft picks. We've got Brock Bowers. It is a very weak running back class, but kind of in a beauty is in the eye of the beholder way where you could see these guys, landing in a good spot for them or whatever. So that's where we're at from a high level. It's a very good rookie class.
It is a very good rookie class. Not if you need running back help. Like as you mentioned, I think last year I sort of defended the running back class. And I think I was somewhat vindicated. I mean, Achan was someone I was sort of like I was a little nervous about the weight. And probably wouldn't have been the guy if you made me pick one guy who was gonna, rise a ton in value. I wouldn't have picked Achan, I don't think. But, I thought we wanted to be taking dart throws on a class that had like a decent kind of middle class of like second round rookie pick types. This class at the running back position, I think, is similar, but it's probably a weaker middle class. And then there's no Robinson, obviously. There's no Gibbs either. I think Jonathon Brooks is kind of a lower tier prospect than even Jahmyr Gibbs. Obviously, also coming off an ACL tear.
Yeah, I mean this is my first hot take is forget Jonathon Brooks. Braelon Allen is the guy that you
Oh
want.
wow.
That's my giga hot take. Yeah, relative to what other nerds are saying.
Okay, so he is very firmly in the that kind of second round rookie pick group for me, but he
Yeah.
doesn't stand out. I have Jonathon Brooks is kind of like a tier above, kind of more of like a late first round rookie pick. Statistically, you got to factor in the ACL discount, but I think he ends up going maybe like late second round in the NFL draft. So I think I'll ultimately be comfortable taking him in the late first. But then I have Trey Benson, Bucky Irving, Braelon Allen, Dylan Lobb, Audric Estime, and kind of borderline Blake Corum. I'm not as into him,
Well,
but
how
though that
about
would be
when
the
Blake
group.
Corum gets selected with the 59th overall pick to the Los Angeles Chargers? What are you going to do with him then?
I'm gonna say I'm sorry I questioned you. You're definitely in this group, but he's still kind of a two down plotter type. So I don't love him,
Well,
but he
when
should
John
be
Har- when
mentioned in this.
Harbaugh is your coach, every down is two downs. Third and seven is two downs
Yeah,
when Harbaugh is your coach and Greg
every
Roman is
down.
your OC.
Yeah, every down is second and three when Jim Harbaugh's coaching. Yeah, I think anyway, I think that's the group. You could even maybe argue Ray Davis belongs in that group, although I think the draft capital is a little shakier there.
No, Ray Davis is sick. I mean, obviously draft capital. We're doing this on February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day. You and I are huddling up to talk about the incoming rookie running back class, but Ray Davis is a guy that I think if he's a third round pick, I'm going to be like, oh, I'm taking him all the time. And if he's a sixth round pick, I'll probably forget he exists. Kind of seems like the
Right,
way to treat
right.
him.
Yeah, 100%. But so that's how I view. I view like Jonathon Brooks and then like a bunch of dudes who I'm all I'm interested in all of these guys as kind of second round rookies. I would be fading all of them. Like if one of these guys turns into Keyshawn Vaughn and, rockets up,
Well, one of them will.
one of them will. I'm probably fading that guy at that point. I would like to kind of have exposure to all of these guys ahead of that. Honestly, Blake Corum is probably someone I need to force myself to take a little bit more of, because he's the guy I'm least likely to chase, and then you end up in this position where you have like a full fade on a guy who could be totally fine. But yeah, why does Allen jump out to you ahead of, does he jump out to you ahead of Brooks as well?
Oh yeah. So Braelon Allen didn't even really play running back in high school. He was a defensive play. I mean, I figured you'd be all over Braelon Allen because he's a converted linebacker. He
You're on
he
my
did
corner,
he
man.
I think he had, if I remember correctly, 82 carries in high school, but he was mostly a defensive recruit, and he got recruited to Wisconsin as a defensive player, but then ended up switching to running back. So he basically had never played running back. And then in his first career start against Illinois, he goes 18 for 131 and one. He ends up rushing for 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns in 9 games as a 17-year-old at Wisconsin. And given that he went to Wisconsin, what ends up happening to him is just like pretty classic, like Big Ten football, where they never really throw him the ball. They mandate him be in a timeshare with this like ninth-year senior, Chez Mellusi, who is like literally half as effective, like averages like 4 yards per carry, where in the same offense, Braelon Allen is averaging like 5.5, 6 yards per carry. Like literally their final season, Chez Mellusi ends up only getting 51 carries, but they have this other guy, Jackson Acker, who's in there getting carries too and averaging 4.5 yards per carry. Allen also finally started catching passes a little bit his final season. He catches 28 passes as a 19-year-old junior. Can't remember many 19-year-old juniors in NFL draft history, but he's 19 right now. I don't even think he turns 20 until some point in the season. He's like kind of a throwback running back in the sense that he's massive. He is 6'2", 235 pounds. I wonder if his team will actually have him lose some weight before the combine so he can run faster. Because I think he probably won't run. He'll probably run like a 4.6 if he doesn't lose any weight and really focus on that. We'll end up seeing what he does. I don't really care. The thesis is these are the teams that I think would potentially spend a pick on him who have high second round picks: the Tennessee Titans, the Washington Commanders, the Green Bay Packers, the Minnesota Vikings, the Las Vegas Raiders, the New York Giants, like the Cincinnati Bengals. These are all teams with like actually a glaring need at running back who pick from like 35 to 50. That's the crazy thing about this very mid running back class is that last offseason we were trying to be like, well, who needs a running back? Everyone has all these running backs under contract. And now, Derrick Henry is going to be moving on. Joe Mixon is probably not going to be a Bengal because they like literally need to save every cap dollar they can in order to give Jamar Chase his money and franchise tag T. Higgins. Dalvin Cook is out of Minnesota, and they just flat benched Alexander Madison. Josh Jacobs probably is not going to be a Raider. The Cowboys need a running back. The Dolphins probably want a complement to
It'd be a
A-Chain,
pretty
who's
fun
not,
compliment to
yeah,
A-Chain,
who's
yeah.
not a million years old. Like there are actually openings at running back, and my thesis is Allen is probably the biggest freak. He was so productive as a 17-year-old in the Big Ten. It's hard for me to imagine he is gonna that's not going to translate. The big negative that someone would point out would, one, be how many passes is a 240-pound running back going to catch,
Yeah.
and he would have to be drafted by a team that really wants what he does. Like if he gets drafted by, I don't, the Chiefs maybe, like, or just whatever, the Chiefs, the Bills, someone like that. It's like the path to him ever getting 250 touches is like so thin. But he would have to kind of go to like a Vrabel style coach, basically.
Yeah, the concerns with him would be he ran like 11 routes per game in his career, which is pretty low. That's like, you know, you
That's
see
like Bo
guys sometimes run
Scarborough.
twice as many of that. Yeah.
Yeah,
He had 0.74 yards per route run, which is pretty poor.
that's
Um,
terrible.
yeah. The things I like about him, obviously the age, the size, are pretty interesting. I mean, the age is kind of nuts. But so I've looked at some of these, like some of the PFF metrics, breakaway percentage, what percentage of your yards are coming on, I believe 15 plus yard runs. That's a cool metric, but I also like to look at the breakaway yards per game. And he does quite well there. And that rewards guys who can handle a lot of carries and then also deliver breakaway yards. I also like to look at the elusive rating, but per game instead of per touch. And he also does well there. So the idea of him is like a guy who can break a lot of tackles in a game, run, hit some big runs over the course of a game. You load him
Zach
up with
Moss.
carries. Yeah, but maybe Deontay Foreman.
Sure. Yeah. I guess Zach Moss never really well, Zach Moss would break tackles and then immediately fall down somehow.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he has like more of that breakaway, even though he's not like going to be like electric on every single touch. When he gets loose, it's going to be a problem. I mean, Derrick Henry obviously is also kind of the other
I was thinking
massive
like
breakaway runner.
Henry, but like Jonathan Taylor actually is like the 99th percentile comp. That's like and then the low end comp is like, I mean, we've seen a billion of these guys, Bo
Right.
Scarborough, Foreman, post Achilles tear, just like guys who literally like cannot be on the field on third down.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the concern. The age is maybe an out there, where you learn
Sure.
to add that to your game down the line. So he's definitely a really interesting dynasty guy. But I mean, Audric Estime is kind of like, to me, he's like a very similar bet. He kind of has like he's a smaller guy. He's not as giant as Allen, but I think he's going to be really fast, and he's also 227, so he's just not like unbelievably big. He is
Right.
big. He is young. He's 20, so you're getting like a similar bet with him. A little bit better yards per route run, 1.12. He ran even fewer routes though, but also pretty good in breakaway yards per game. Really elusive. His elusive rating is very high, so he's like, why do you prefer Allen so much to Estime?
I mean, one, it's like kind of like partly a meme, because he is literally 19 years old. The other thing about Estime was that he did more timeshare. There were three other running backs that played for Notre Dame, which is just like a little, I don't know what that's telling me. Also, they're both the funny thing is they're both kind of in offenses where it's hard to learn about their skill set because they play so few competitive games and they don't play anything resembling a pro style offense. Like learning about an SEC running back is just so much easier than
Mm.
learning about a Big Ten running back because the stuff that Braelon Allen is doing at Wisconsin or that Estime is doing at Notre Dame, I guess Notre Dame's not technically a Big Ten. I guess they're independent, but they play a lot of Big Ten teams is you're just running like 1960s offenses. You're just like it's like being a Michigan running back. It's like learning about Blake Corum,
Right. Right.
like they're just playing a totally different brand of football than what you would see in an NFL playoff game.
Right.
I didn't realize Estime was so big though. That is interesting. Knowing he's 227 is interesting to me.
Yeah. So Allen finished his college career at 19.9 years old and estimates at 20.3. So like they're
Sure.
pretty, and then he's 227 instead of 245. So they both were committee backs. I think Allen looks like a better breakaway runner, but maybe a little bit worse as a receiver. So they're just sort of similar bets. I have no problem preferring Allen. He rates like a hair better in my stuff, but they're very, very similar. Um, what about Trey Benson? He's like he reminds me a little bit of kind of Cam Akers is like pre-Achilles tear is sort of and he's actually a guy I could see going second round, getting installed as like a pretty obvious guy who's going to be the starter by the end of the year and jumping up into the even like the fifth round of redraft leagues by the time we get to the end of August.
I mean, this is the interesting game that we're playing right now because it is a pretty mid running back class. So we're not really coming into it with real priors where Gibbs is a good example where almost any team that would have taken him, we would have kind of been, like, or Kendre Miller, actually, that's a better comparison. Where like Kendre Miller was like beyond buried, buried by Jamal Williams and Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara, and we were still like, I don't know, he might be a
Yeah.
15th round pick,
Yeah. I
um,
don't know. Maybe I
because
should hammer this guy nonstop.
yeah, because we liked the profile, whereas I
Right.
don't outside of Allen, I don't really like any of these guys, and it's going to be pretty contingent on where they go. And this is probably the last draft class where we are going to have to factor in COVID stuff in a serious way, where you can't take the fact that a guy is a fourth year guy, that he transferred, that he never got over, X limitation, because shit was so weird. He commits to Oregon and then redshirts and then transfers. Like, but Oregon is in this huge upheaval. The Pac-12 was the conference that was most impacted by COVID stuff in 2020. Like, I think most Pac-12 teams in 2020 only played 4 games. So it's just like, and coaches probably didn't even really know who they had for a
Hmm.
lot of different reasons. And then, yeah, I mean, he transfers and like he's awesome. He even in 2022, which is really his first time ever playing, he was awesome for Florida State and scored a bunch of touchdowns. And maybe most positive for his profile, immediately came in as the lead pass catching back, led their backfield in receptions the final year. He also split some time with other guys, but this is pretty interesting if you are a bull. So this guy he split time with in 2022, Treshaun Ward, he was better than him, caused Treshaun Ward to transfer. Treshaun Ward transfers to Kansas State and is awesome for
Hmm.
K-State, like for a K-State team that punched above their weight in 2023. So maybe an indicator that Benson is actually better than the results that he got. I'm Benson curious, and I could see him being one of the guys who goes to a better offense that is like, yeah, we'd like to use him, kind of in a multifaceted role where he's playing some on early downs, but some on third downs too.
Yeah, he looks somewhat versatile. 1.25 yards per route run, really good breakaway percentage, good elusive rating. He's a committee back, as you mentioned, and it's kind of interesting if you look at Rotoviz's backfield dominator rating, and Blair Andrews has written a lot about this, is like a really nice way to find guys who fall in the draft. It's not as important for guys who have draft capital. So I think Benson, Estime, Allen, it'll be really important that like NFL teams think these college committee backs are actually like good. Because if they don't, the fact they were college committee backs
Is
is pretty
is
concerning.
it's a death knell. Like if you're a
Yeah.
college committee back and you're a fifth round pick, it's probably not happening for you.
Yeah. You really want to see a guy just like have been his team's offense. We do have some of those players. Dylan, is it Lob? How do you say his name?
Yeah, I think it's Laub. It is spelled Laube.
His peak backfield dominator rating was 94%. His career is 86%. It's very high. He has a career 2.30 yards per route run. He actually broke a fair amount of tackles. Not like going to be a big breakaway guy, I don't think, but like being able to break tackles, being able to be efficient in the receiving game, being able to handle a bunch of touches, and have sufficient size. He's 210. Maybe comes in, 205 or something. Maybe the 210's inflated, but he's old. That's, he's 24 years old. So you don't love that. But, you know, we've seen guys with this kind of profile be pretty interesting.
I mean, we've seen this exact guy. We've seen
Yeah.
this exact guy 10 times.
I mean, it's sort of a worse version of Rashad White's profile, I would say, but
Yeah.
it's not like crazy, crazy different where you're like, he's probably going to disappoint as a runner if given a full workload, but he could probably do it. He could handle it. And then he's actually adding value as a receiver. More likely he'll end up being like a Rex Burkhead or a Danny Woodhead if people comp is like an upside. But yeah, he's someone I think worth thinking about, like super late in drafts right now. Ray Davis is another guy who had 82% peak backfield dominator rating, 77% for his career. So very much not a committee back in a class full of them. He's pretty interesting.
Well, he's pretty interesting because he played in the SEC for like kind of like some dog shit teams. Like it was specifically his final year at Kentucky. They were not very good. And like I think I gotta pull up his game logs, but I know that he had like good games against like, the like Georgia and stuff, like where they were just like, yeah, let's just give this dude the ball, which is I mean I tend to kind of fall for stuff like that. Like 2023, yeah, he had against Florida, a game they end up winning, a ranked Florida team, 26 carries, 280 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He caught multiple passes in all but 4 of their games. Has 2 for 120 against Missouri. They gave him the ball 15 times against Georgia. Like he I mean, just your classic college workhorse running back. Probably won't catch a ton of passes in the NFL, but more likely to be installed with a full workload than, like, for example, his underdog ADP in the big board is right now.
Yeah, I mean, he ran 17 routes a game. Again, some of the other guys we talked about, it's like twice as much. Like Estime only ran 8 routes a game. Corum just under 10. Allen just over 10. So that's nice. He was out there a lot. His efficiency wasn't great. 1.01 yards per out run. Not brutal, not good. But yeah, I mean, he was trusted to do everything. And he broke tackles. Doesn't look like he has much burst in terms of breakaway running. I don't know how athletic he'll ultimately test, but he does have decent size at 220. Another older back. So kind of Brian Robinson was a name that kind of came to mind. Is like, I remember
That's
when he
yeah,
came
that's
out.
that's pretty good. That's
Yeah,
pretty
you were
good.
like, dude, get on board. Coaches are gonna love this guy. It doesn't matter he sucks in all your numbers. And Robinson kind of sucked in all the stuff that I
It
look
still
at.
kind of sucks in the NFL, but
Still
his coaches
kind of
his
does
he
now.
he got he got shot in the leg, and Ron Rivera's like, you know what? That's my guy, you know?
Ron Rivera, not a head coach anymore. Weird. Ray Davis is actually kind of popping in some of my stuff in a way. Not like popping, but more than
Yeah.
Robinson. I think he's like, especially the other thing is I have him plugged in as like a fourth, fifth round pick. Um, and it's possible he's a third round pick. So, he would move up in the statistical stuff, obviously if the draft capital was better. So he's definitely someone to mix in late in best ball, I think.
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of classic us to be like, all right, let's terrible running back class. Let's start by talking about all these mid running backs instead of talking about the actual interesting players. So to give people an idea, the way things are working right now, if you are doing your dynasty superflex drafts, you're gonna have to make your first decision is gonna start at 1. Pat's gonna say it's not a decision. I think it probably is a decision between Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. I think in a certain set of leagues, not every league, obviously. I'll bet it'll be 80-20 if you look at like every superflex draft that happens on MFL, between Caleb Williams being the 80% and Marvin Harrison Jr. being the 20%. That is my estimation.
I mean, I don't think it's crazy. His he's such a good prospect. And
Yes.
I had Connor Rogers on the pod yesterday and I was asking him like, because one of the things about when you're doing wide receiver prospects, one of the best prospects all time, objectively, is Amari Cooper. Like
Yeah.
he was such a clean prospect.
Yes, he was.
But I think what that was telling us to some degree is like this dude is going to be good. Like you should have the utmost confidence that this is a good NFL wide
Good
receiver.
player. Yeah.
Right. How much of it though is that he's going to be a superstar, right? Like I think obviously, some of the same things we're looking at to help us determine whether or not a guy's good are also going to help us determine whether or not he's a superstar, but it gets a little difficult at wide receiver where like Justin Jefferson, I think, also was similar where you're like, this guy's going to be good. But we all discounted him because they're like, I don't know about the ceiling. The ceiling isn't popping. He looks
Yeah.
safe. I don't know about the ceiling. I think wide receiver can be tough that way where like, is Marvin Harrison Jr. just super, super safe? Or is he actually, looking like potential superstar? I get the feeling from, reading, listening, talking to Connor yesterday, like, yeah, we are talking about a potential superstar, and we should probably proceed with the idea that this guy is going to be like, I think he said like basically in 3 years, the floor would probably be as a top 12 wide receiver. The ceiling is he's the best wide receiver in the entire league. So, I mean, when you have that kind of floor ceiling combo, it is hard not to just go ahead and, I mean, he's literally Marvin Harrison's son, and he's often considered the best player in the entire draft by draft evaluators. So I actually have no problem with it. I don't like Caleb Williams as much as consensus. Like I don't know, maybe I'm just burned by Bryce Love or Bryce Young,
Yeah.
where it's like also burned by Bryce Love, but Bryce Young, like just, oh, it doesn't matter. He's such a playmaker. He's such a creator, you know, but like playing within structure, if anything, seems to be getting like more important as, the Shanahan systems kind of proliferate and everything. And
Yeah, I hate that though.
yeah, but I mean, like we need these guys to succeed at the NFL level, and the odds are he'll be awesome. But
Sure.
there's like just a little bit of me that's nervous about like super long time to throw, kind of plays best when everything kind of breaks down and he's like a magician making things happen on his own. I've heard, some of the stuff I heard was like right after the Notre Dame game loss or whatever, but throwing with anticipation can be an issue, like waiting to see guys come open sometimes, like just like things that make me a little bit nervous as far as like, is this guy going to crush it in an NFL system? Um, I probably still would take him number one, but I have no issues if you wanted to take Harrison.
Yeah, I definitely am taking him like 100% number one. I'm not sweating it. And in fact, if the market continues to drift this way where it's like souring a little bit, I have to find a way for that to be profitable because Caleb Williams is so fucking good at football. And like
Wait,
I've
hang on.
got
You just said you're taking Harrison one, so I
no,
can't
no,
get
no,
you on.
no, no. I did not say that. I said that people are going to have that decision that
Okay. Oh, right. You said you think it's a decision. Okay, but
I
you're
I think
still
it
taking Caleb Williams one.
I'm still taking Caleb Williams one.
Okay.
And I might even take
I
Drake
think it's a
May
decision
too.
too. I think it's also a decision.
Yeah. And part of it is going to be like, the Bears fucking stink ass. Like the Bears just like ruin everything. And so like you're kind of putting your trust in this organization that can't get shit right. Like, it's funny. And someone pointed this out the other day. Weirdly enough, I got a very insightful comment from the Swolecast chat, which has got to be the first time that's ever happened.
Wow. Wow.
But I never thought of it this way, which is that the Bears actually traded away CJ Stroud in that deal. They did. They could have selected CJ Stroud, right? Which was not really on the table at the time. People were just
Right.
saying like it's either Bryce Love or whatever. But it's pretty painful to realize they had the pick that they could have just sat on the clock and put CJ Stroud's name on the paper and just had him. And he just, won a playoff game, right? And now they're putting themselves in the position to do it again. Insanely lucky, like luck of the highest order to make this trade and then be put in the position to do it again. And they might stare the gift horse in the face again and be like, no, we're going to build around Justin, which I think is like 5%. I think there's like no way it
No, I don't
happens
think they do
anyways.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, neither here nor there.
I
But
think they need to start hinting maybe they will to try to get the phone to ring. I don't think anyone's calling about Fields right now.
so sure, there's some off-field stuff with Caleb Williams. He's crying in the stands. He wears nail polish. Whatever. Like people are. I don't actually really get the sense of what people it is they don't like about him because if you just look at what he's done on the actual football field, maybe you could feel a little bit of hesitation that he ended his USC career by losing to I mean, really, these are not bad losses. Like losing to Notre Dame, I guess he threw 3 interceptions. That's not great. Losing to Utah is fine. They had the best defense pretty much in the entire Pac-12. Losing to Washington, obviously no problem there. They end up being a college football playoff team. Losing to Oregon, like whatever, Oregon, good team. Losing to UCLA is not great, but he goes 31 of 42 for 384 yards in that game. I mean, the guy came in as an 18-year-old. This is crazy. He came in as an 18-year-old true freshman. The first time he ever played college football. Spencer Rattler, who is supposed to be the #1 overall pick in 2021, just gets benched mid-game against the University of Texas, which is Oklahoma's biggest rival, right? Like this is like the biggest game. Rattler gets benched. Caleb Williams comes off the bench, 18 years old, true freshman, goes 16 for 25, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, 8.5 YPA, and then is also runs very effectively in this game, 4 for 88 and a touchdown. Actually, he's Oklahoma's second leading rusher as an 18-year-old. This is not like fucking Mitch Trubisky running hot for a year at the University of North Carolina. That is not what this is. Like this guy he's got all the tools. He's a little small. He's like 215 pounds and 6'1". I mean, he's not as big as like Mahomes or Burrow or Allen or whatever, but he's not like Drew Brees. My take is I'm tuning out all the noise of, oh, he's crying in the stands. He looks weird in his Sports Illustrated photos. Like, I just don't care. Jim Santis just published his quarterback model, and Caleb Williams is his best prospect of the last decade. Without even really accounting for his freshman and sophomore stats, Jim's model really weighs final season stuff the most. So it doesn't even matter that he won a Heisman at 19.
That's pretty good if the final season wasn't as strong as the year before.
Yeah, I just don't care. I think Caleb is the best quarterback since at least Lawrence and maybe Luck, actually, in terms of just prospect profile.
Yeah, one thing that's the red flag for me is, he didn't make that many plays. Like when you look at his first reads, like how much was he executing on the first read, and then how many mistakes was he making on non-first reads? Like,
yeah,
and he actually made a lot, sacks and interceptions and stuff on, when the play broke down. He made a lot of fun plays too, but that's the red flag to me. It's, you could argue about how big of a red flag it is. But it's kind of interesting to me that like the NFL doesn't seem that concerned about it. And therefore, maybe it's not that big of a red flag, because like it's the type of thing that I would think the NFL would really care about. And if they ultimately don't, and he goes #1 overall, which he's expected to do, then I'm just not like that interested in being like, I don't know.
exactly.
What about the turnover worthy plays, when he's scrambling around? Like they're not concerned. I shouldn't be that concerned.
I don't mean to make this one-to-one comp, but the things that people are saying as a negative about Caleb Williams reminds me a lot of the things that people said about Mahomes, where he makes too many turnover-worthy plays. He spends too much time trying to get out of the pocket, too much time improvising, too much time doing jazz. And I'm like, I guess it kind of depends on what you want out of a quarterback. Like if your perfect goal of a quarterback is Brock Purdy, then yeah, I don't know, take JJ McCarthy then, I guess. Like JJ McCarthy is way more likely to be a quarterback who like loses an NFC Conference Championship game going 21 of 32 for 266 yards. I totally grant that. JJ McCarthy way more likely to end up with that path. But Caleb Williams is infinitely more likely to be like the 6th best quarterback in the NFL in a year, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think like in my stuff, so what I'm looking at, I'm trying to figure out who's going to be like an incredible fantasy quarterback. And so, some of the really good quarterbacks don't always pop.
Jayden Daniels will probably score the most fantasy points out of all of them as a rookie.
Yeah, he probably will. But like, Joe Burrow doesn't like necessarily pop a ton in the stuff I'm looking at. but that's fine. Like Joe Burrow, I didn't argue against, and I won't argue against Caleb Williams. I think he basically comes out as like a really strong prospect, um, with some minor red flags. The guy that think I I guess I should just be happy about this. I think we should just quietly sit back and draft the shit out of Drake May.
Yeah,
We
that's
don't have to
ultimately that's the answer.
we don't have to argue about whether he should go ahead of Williams because he probably shouldn't because you want Williams. And
I would
anytime
not kill the Bears for doing it or the Commanders for trading up. Like I wouldn't kill anyone for May. Like I get it. There's less just like question marks floating in the air about Drake May, but Kit Williams is better.
yeah, and I think we want Williams. Williams is a really strong prospect, and the market has put its foot down here that he, at least as of right now, he is the clear number one in the class. He's going to go first in dynasty drafts. He's going way ahead in best ball. You want Caleb Williams. I think just kind of follow the market there. But Drake May really pops for me.
Yeah.
And the reason he does is I really like big time deep throws. Guys who
Yeah.
are having these PFF's big time throws, but on deep passes. This is one of the reasons I was super high on Anthony Richardson coming into last year because everyone was like, oh, he can't pass. He can't pass. This dude passed, like Richardson was aggressive and good on deep
Yes.
throws. He just couldn't pass to the short area, which I could care less about because he's a massive human who runs. Now, he did get hurt running when he could have dumped off potentially. But you're betting on a rushing quarterback. The fact that he can't throw short isn't a problem as long as he can hit plays deep downfield. May is also massive. He's not going to run like Richardson, but we're talking about a 230-pound quarterback who is actually pretty accurate at all areas of the field, but an even better deep passer than Richardson, and one of the best deep passers, statistically coming in that we've really ever had. So I'm like, I love the kind of the Herbert comps that you get, but maybe like a more aggressive, deep passing mindset, and ability. I mean, this guy's got a really strong arm, maybe not as good as Herbert's, but he's maybe willing to challenge a little bit more deep downfield. He's also a willing scrambler. His rushing stats look very similar to Justin Fields coming in. Obviously, he's not going to turn into the rusher that Justin Fields was, but I think gives you an idea of just,
He also
he's
probably won't
not
get sacked once at every 10 times he drops back.
much better at avoiding sacks than Fields. Yeah, I don't think he's going to need to run like Fields has because he's going to be a better passer. But I mean, just a big dude with mobility who runs willingly and passes deep willingly. It's kind of like aggressive Herbert is sort of the what I'm thinking of him as. What you're dreaming is maybe he can be kind of another Josh Allen type. And I mean, Josh Allen's the number one quarterback in fantasy. So I'm pretty excited about May. And I really don't get the big discount that you're getting on him. I mean, you're seeing him go behind Daniels in some of the dynasty stuff, and he's going behind him in best ball. Like best ball makes a little bit more sense, but for dynasty, like no way. Give me May. May's going to succeed at the NFL level. Daniels probably does, but he's a skinny runner who takes a lot of hits. That could go bad. May executes an
And
NFL offense
Jayden
and is going to
Daniels
score a lot of
is
points.
Jayden Daniels is older than Sam Howell, I think.
That's not ideal. It's not ideal.
I don't actually think he's older than Sam Howell. No, he and Sam Howell are the same age. They're both 23.
Daniels was, I was going back and listening to some stuff before the season, and Daniels is like, he seemed like maybe he's a guy to keep an eye on as a potential day two pick if he has a good season. And then I was listening to Connor Rogers and Trevor Sikkema's pod in November, I think, and they were like Trevor was like, I'm putting him in my top 50, man. And maybe that feels a little high, but I'm putting him top 50, and they're like, yeah, honestly, I think he could sneak into round one. And now he's like going to go number 3 overall, which, tells you how, what a great final season he had. But an older player with that kind of one season that boosts his stock that much over a guy that was, talked about ahead of the season is kind of in the race for the top quarterback and has done nothing. If anything, I mean, like Dane Brugler had Drake May a month or so ago as his number one quarterback. I don't think he is now, but he's been in the mix for the top quarterback in the class for a while. And I think really checks a lot of boxes from a fantasy perspective that he's not getting full credit for.
And he's going to be drafted to a team that already has 2 good wide receivers, which is it's a lot better than throwing to Adam
Curtis
Thielen and
Samuel's a
DJ
free
Shark.
agent.
Oh, you're already out. You've already turncoated on Jahan Dotson. He doesn't exist to you.
I'm supposed to call this guy a good wide receiver now?
He's good as a rookie. He was good as a rookie.
Honestly, he wasn't.
He scored some touchdowns as a rookie.
We were gaslit about his rookie season. He had as a rookie, he had a good second half of the season, but he had 1.39 yards per route run, which is bad. And then, he had a good second half, but then he dropped a sweet 0.82 for us as a sophomore. Now a career 1.03 yards per route run. Not willing to say that Jahan Dotson's good. I'm sorry, I'm not there. Maybe he's not terrible. Maybe he rebounds, but yeah.
Okay, so he's got one good wide receiver and a guy who might be okay.
They
also Washington also has a very high pick in the second round, obviously, which could be used on another wide receiver, which teams do a lot when they take a rookie quarterback. Generally, they do take with that pick around. They take their Jonathan Mingo.
God, and then I draft him. I'm gonna be drafting him. Yeah. Who's this year's Mingo? Johnny Wilson?
No, he won't. There actually are big-bodied wide receivers, so like the only guy who's 6'4" won't shoot up 80 picks just because he is 6'4".
You're right.
I mean, this year's Quentin Johnson is Keon Coleman. That's gonna be that's gonna happen. He's gonna be like the 24th pick, and he's gonna stink.
I know. Before we go wide receiver, I mean, do you have any Daniels thoughts? Like, I'm actually a little bit nervous about Jayden Daniels because of the weight being a little. He's not like tiny, but he's.
I mean, Jayden
not big.
Daniels, if there would have been a universal rule that you had to declare as a quarterback after your 3rd season or whatever, or age 21, he would not have gotten drafted. He would not have gotten drafted after his final season at Arizona State. 10 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 7.1 YPA, 4 rushing touchdowns, I believe, on 300 passing attempts. Like, got awful. And had a good season at LSU as a senior, and then obviously had the Heisman season as a super senior. And I've said this on every show, so people are already going to get sick of it. And you guys have, I think 69 days until the NFL draft, so you're going to get extra sick of it.
Nice.
But nice. He obviously the comp is easy to find because he went to LSU. The last quarterback we saw with 2 all-star wide receivers at LSU, Joe Burrow, great NFL quarterback.
Yep.
The last quarterback before that to throw to 2 first-round quality wide receivers. Do you remember?
I do, because I listened to your pod with Kevin Cole. Zach
Mettenberger threw to Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham, and Jeremy Hill was the running back, and I believe he was the 8th overall selection to the Titans. Does that sound right? Let's look this up.
It does.
Now I gotta know.
Yeah. Are you?
Zach Mettenberger.
I don't think he went that high, did he?
Zach Mettenberger in the NFL draft. No. Okay, I'm totally capping. He was a Titan, but he was a day 3 pick.
You're thinking of that other dude who was athletic.
Jake Locker, maybe?
You're thinking of Jake Locker.
I'm thinking of Jake Locker.
He went super high.
Who was the 8th overall pick to the Titans. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I am thinking of Jake Locker. All right. So point being, it's very hard to read between the lines and say which one of these 2 guys is he. Because I think anyone who can just say, oh, Jayden Daniels made Malik Neighbors, like, there's just no chance that's true. No way. No chance. Yeah.
When I had Connor on, he was talking about Brian Thomas's separation, and I mentioned that he actually has statistically one thing. I have like a screener that looks for guys who have a really high percentage of their targets contested, and then don't have.
Was Keon Coleman number 1?
So, well, I should say this is specifically it's looking at deep targets, and actually should pull up Coleman. I'm not sure, but so Brian Thomas had a high percentage of his deep targets contested, and then he didn't have a great contested catch rate over his career on those deep targets. He did actually in his final season have a pretty strong one, but early in his career he wasn't great. The idea is, okay, if a lot of your deep targets are contested, maybe you're not separating well, and then if you're not like an awesome contested catch guy, are you just kind of Quentin Johnston? But Connor was noting like a lot of when he was watching, he's like he had a lot of underthrown deep balls from Jayden Daniels. And
Brian
so
Thomas, yes,
yeah.
So and when you watch Brian Thomas, even if you just watch like his just bombs production 4 minute highlight thing, you'll see no defender is ever in the frame because he just completely burnt them at the line of scrimmage. But he's got to wait like 1.5 seconds for the ball to get to him.
Yeah. So that's like a red flag. I mean, it's one of the things where I'm like, I'm way less worried about that from Thomas now. Like he's, and Thomas has a really strong profile otherwise. His production wasn't quite there, but he's also playing alongside Malik Neighbors, who looks awesome, and he's a 3-year guy, who's going to get drafted very highly. I like Thomas, but it makes me worried about not Neighbors. It makes me worried about Daniels. If we're thinking he was made by these wide receivers. We would have gotten in trouble though last year thinking that about Stroud. I don't know. So maybe they're all good, but I think
Totally
it's a little
possible.
bit of a red flag.
Totally not ruling it out that Jayden Daniels actually is the third best quarterback in this class, that Malik Neighbors really is that good, that Brian Thomas actually does. Because we've literally seen this. I mean, we've seen it with Ohio State. How many Alabama teams have we seen this with where the wide receivers were good, the quarterback was good, the running back was good, they're all good, right? It's totally possible. Daniels just there's just no way around it. He's got a funky profile. Being a 5-year quarterback, which we have with Daniels, Penix, and Nix. It's Bo Nix's fucking first career game was against Justin Herbert, who's on his second NFL contract. Like it's a weird quarterback class.
Oh man. By the way, Keon Coleman does have the highest contested catch rate on deep passes, contested target rate on deep passes.
Yeah,
of anyone.
I'm already like so right now. Keon Coleman is on average the wide receiver 6, the 10th overall selection in Superflex drafts. This is using the Dynasty League football combinatorial rankings. I'll just say this: if Xavier Worthy gets selected after Keon Coleman, but by a team I like better, the Bills, the Chiefs, the Cowboys, someone like that. I don't care who takes Coleman. I don't care how high he goes. I'm taking Worthy over him if that happens. Same with Mitchell too. Same with I don't know how to say his name right. Adonai Mitchell.
I just say AD Mitchell.
AD Mitchell.
So
Sure.
I've heard other people say it, and I'm like, sweet, that lets me off the hook. It can even sound cool, like I know.
Yeah,
I know what
I'm too the psychological scars of watching Quentin Johnston just have like balls bounce off his helmet in the NFL. I can't do that again.
Yeah, I think Keon Coleman, I'm gonna start taking a little more of in best ball because he's gonna probably get drafted in the first round. He's going to likely see his price increase when that happens. And as like a Kadarius Toney type of, this guy isn't that good, but the team's working to get him involved kind of play, that can actually kind of pay off as long as you're taking him in the double digit rounds, of best ball. A dynasty, I think I'm more willing to just make a stand and be like, I'm not doing this. He has a lot of red flags. So
It's just weird that he is so consensus being mocked there when everyone universally acknowledges the red flags, and the two Texas guys don't seem to have the red flags. Worthy and Mitchell don't really seem to have that big of red flags.
well, Worthy and Mitchell both actually have. So AD Mitchell has a similar, the separation red flag that I was mentioning. He actually has that too, although kind of just barely.
Because he's fucking Gumby. He's 6'4", 190 pounds.
And then Worthy was used a lot on like screens, and a lot of his yak was generated on really shallow passes.
Yeah.
So that's like, potentially gadget player usage. Although I've heard people
We
talk
we
about,
like gadget players though. You heard of Rashi Rice?
yeah, it can work out okay, but it can also be a problem. I mean, Rondale Moore, there's some times it doesn't work. Um, but I think both players are supposed to be pretty good route runners. So that makes me a little bit less nervous about each of those red flags. Coleman, I mean, Coleman wasn't that productive for a 3-year player. 22% career market share yards.
This is
Not
where I'm
great.
missing having Jakob because Jakob could provide us good context because he's in
On his
all these
Devi status.
well, he's in all these virgin Devy leagues, so we could be like,
Yeah.
Keon Coleman has been supposed to be the best wide receiver since he was 16 years old. Like I
He only
think
had,
that's what it is.
he had 1.87 yards per route run, which is not good. So like Coleman doesn't really, he's a 3-year player who's 215. He's gonna be like 6'4". He's gonna get drafted in the first round, probably, if not in the second. And that's it. That's like the whole thing. And then but everything else that you would look for, he was like bad in.
Okay, but
The,
did you know that Keon Coleman played basketball at Michigan State?
I've heard. Yeah.
I'm not even gonna lie. I'm not joking. I am not being sarcastic in any way. That does like I like that. To me that just signals actually this guy's like a crazy athlete. Like not even just physically, but like with like your proprioception and stuff. Just like your ability to uh manipulate space. I think being that athletic is like a clear positive for an NFL wide receiver.
No, I do too. I mean, and he's going to test well. We'll feel good about that. So it's a thing where like there's volatility to this profile, and I think it's easy to get focused on the negative, especially after Quentin Johnston just busted super hard with a somewhat similar profile. And that maybe we avoid another landmine if you just fade him. But I think you do want to acknowledge that anytime a 3-year player who is super athletic gets drafted in the first round, potentially with a really good landing spot, like
There's
there's
something
also
we're
a lot
not
of
that's
upside.
something it's something the nerds would not see that the NFL teams are seeing. If that's this like he wasn't insanely productive, was still a first round pick, did declare early, there's something that's not showing up in the data for sure.
Yeah. And like, these prospect evaluations are hard and they're kind of weird sometimes where it's like, if a guy's just good enough at the stuff he does well, then maybe the stuff he doesn't do well doesn't matter. But if you're like below that mark, then all of a sudden it's a huge, huge problem. T. Higgins is a different type of player, but like T. Higgins is just good enough at the contested catch stuff and kind of playing that bully ball, old school wide receiver style that it like doesn't matter that much that he has some limitations as a receiver. Maybe Coleman's the similar, like a different strengths and weaknesses, but maybe Coleman's similar. He's like, no, he really is just that athletic. He's good after the catch. Like it doesn't matter that he can't get separation at all and that his route tree is going to be weird and you can't just throw him out there and be a pro and that's good enough. They're going to have to design stuff for him a little bit more and all that, but maybe they will, and so I guess what I would say is like if you're really scared of Coleman, and I'm generally pretty nervous about him, find like the least upsetting ways that you can get exposure to this guy. And right now, I think one of those is trying to mix him in current best ball
It's
drafts where
it's
he's
best
not
ball.
that
It's
expensive.
treating him like Rashi Rice, right? We're like
Yeah,
I actually don't think I have Rashi in any dynasty league if I'd have to go look, but I was all over him in best ball because the
right.
prices didn't make I mean we said this all off season, but if Sky Moore didn't exist, Rashi Rice would have been eighth round pick or whatever in best ball.
Yeah,
But
paid it
because
off.
but
Yeah,
because Sky Moore existed, because Sky, the round and McCole Hardman, because those guys had existed before him. We were just like, oh, the Chiefs can't draft wide receivers. These dudes stink.
yeah, no, 100%. And Coleman's a better prospect than Rice, and Rice hit like way more than I think. I mean, certainly than I thought he would. Like and Rice is kind of interesting too, where like Rice does certain things pretty damn well and other things not so well, and you know he's good enough at the things he's good enough at. So Yeah, I think best ball actually I need to be more aggressive on Coleman. I
He's
probably end
pretty
up
cheap too, isn't he? Like the wide receiver 54 right now in the big board or something.
he's way yeah, he's going outside the top 100 picks. He's like around 110 or something. And best ball, it's like Harrison's in his own tier, then Neighbors is in his own tier, then Rome Odunze's in his own tier, then Brian Thomas is in his own tier, and you have to get all the way down to Coleman, Franklin. Um,
Like, for
some of
example, Khalil Shakir is going ahead of Keon Coleman right now, and Keon Coleman might just actually be the wide receiver one for the Bills, you know,
yeah,
like just the way things might play out. So that is an example
that's hilarious.
of why it's good to take shots on him right now.
100%. Yeah, that's such a good way to frame it. Yeah, I mean he's going outside the top 100, and that's where like all these guys kind of get clumped up a little bit. I've taken a lot of Troy Franklin there, and I like Troy Franklin a lot, but I definitely want to take more Keon Coleman and mix it up a little bit more because, to quote David Kitchen, we just don't know.
We just don't know. All right, so I guess let's rewind a little bit and let's go back to the top of the class. So we got Harrison, group of his own, Neighbors, Odunze, Franklin, Thomas. Where are you at on? I mean, Thomas and Odunze are both interesting for different reasons. Thomas obviously because he played with Neighbors, and Odunze because so much of it was final season production, which we don't always love that. He also is another guy who played 4 seasons, but again, the COVID stuff with the Pac-12, it's just we're gonna have to keep coming back to this Pac-12 guys. They played 4 games. He had 6 receptions as a true freshman. I guess he wasn't. It's not that he was bad in 2022. Still led. Actually, Jalen McMillan. That's kind of the interesting is Jalen McMillan injured basically all of 2023. Definitely impacted. How much was available for Odunze because McMillan had more touchdowns and receptions than Odunze did in 2022.
Interesting. Yeah. Ben Gretsch was like on Chip Chasing as the Huskies were making their run. He's like, Pat, you're not gonna like Odunze and you're gonna be wrong. And he's obviously a Huskies fan. And I was like, oh God, I'm gonna have to go to war with Ben over this old prospect who I'm not gonna like. But I think he's fine. Like I don't have a strong stand actually on. I mean, he's gonna probably go top 10 in the NFL draft. He, you know, is probably going to test fairly well. His yards per route run as an underclassman were actually pretty good. 2.17 yards per route run in his underclassman years. So it's not just that he had this incredible season, in his final year. He did have a very strong season, but he's got 28% career market share of yards, 29% career dominator rating. Those are good numbers. So he actually kind of looks like, a fairly productive older prospect. And so I'm fairly interested in him. If he were to get like super expensive, I'm not going to chase. If people were talking about him over Neighbors in Dynasty, no, thank you. But that doesn't seem to be where people are at. And so I don't feel like fading, a guy that's going to have awesome draft capital. Seems like a pretty well-rounded, like actual
He
receiver, you
has
know?
blonde cornrows. It's always going to be a huge plus for me personally.
Yeah, so he's checking a lot of boxes.
He's checking a
Uh,
lot of boxes.
the one thing I would say about Odunze is I don't really get if we're talking about tight end premium why he would go ahead of Brock Bowers. That's like kind of in Dynasty. If I'm light on Odunze, it's because I'd be taking Bowers over him. And from what I'm seeing, that's not going to be the consensus. Maybe Bowers will ultimately slot in ahead, but I think you'll see Odunze go ahead of Bowers, and
Well,
I'm
Bowers is going
Bowers
to
over
go
Odunze.
ahead of Odunze in the NFL draft and in fantasy drafts, I bet.
Okay. But okay, if we're looking at like, you get the 3 quarterbacks, you get Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors, and
Yeah.
then you have Brock Bowers. That's like your kind of consensus top 6.
Yes. Pretty
Odunze
big
at
drop
7.
after that, I think. But I think Odunze, I think there's a tier break, and then I think it's Odunze right now.
I'm good with that. That works for me. I think Brian Thomas, has enough. He wasn't that productive, so it's like a little bit of. Do you want the underclassman speedster who you're kind of looking to develop a little bit more, or do you want the kind of more polished, 4-year guy who got drafted, ahead of Thomas most likely, if not top 10. So, I think you could, if you wanted to go Thomas over Odunze, like I'm probably more open to that than most, but I would right now I would take Odunze 7.
Sure. So, do you want to know my most Jedi bell curve meme thought on these wide receivers? But in the sense that, depending on your perspective, it could either be left curve or the Jedi curve. I mean, I want to look at what these guys did in the absolute biggest games for their teams. And Odunze absolutely smoked. He went nuclear in the games that really mattered for Washington. 8 for 102 against Oregon, 6 for 125 against Texas, 7 for 122 against Washington State in a game they absolutely had to win against Cameron Ward. It was like pretty close. And then had like bad games that just like didn't matter. Like, oh, against Arizona, 5 for 64, like whatever. We're beating the shit out of them. Oh, we play Oregon in the regular season, and if we lose this game, we can't win the conference. But if we win this game, we can. 8 for 128 and 2. 5 for 87 against Michigan. Now they ended up getting their ass kicked, and it didn't really matter. But this is, I mean, and this is a very old thought because it goes all the way back to the Odell Beckham stuff and like 2012 Rotoviz era of like Odell Beckham's biggest games in college came against like Furman. He famously only scored 2 touchdowns in SEC play back in the day. But I bet you Ben would say the same thing when talking about Odunze. He'd be like, the team knew in their biggest, hardest games against their biggest competition that sure, Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan could contribute against Arizona State, but when we're playing Oregon, it's got to be an Odunze specific game plan.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. That seems good. We like metrics like yardage share, dominator rating, like because it's like, was the team looking to feature this guy? Was this guy able to go out there?
That's literally it. Yeah.
Yeah. And if the team was specifically looking to feature him in their biggest and most important games, that seems good. You're going to your best players when it matters. So, it's kind of like is a way to sort of like keep yourself calm about a prospect that does have, I think, some statistical red flags, and say, look, this guy's going to go top 10. He was clearly the number one on his offense. And, he was efficient. He was productive throughout his career. The final season boosted him probably, maybe he might have gone in like the second round if not for this final season or something, but it's not like he came out of nowhere. It's not like he's a random guy that is only going top 10 because of one season. So yeah, I think he's someone that I want to be price sensitive on, but I don't want to just kind of get like lost in the stat weeds and not recognize that he looks like a pretty good prospect when you kind of zoom out.
Yes, he does. And I think that's probably the end of guys that you can't argue about. I think Thomas you can argue about, and I definitely think Troy Franklin seems like a guy who there's going to be real arguments about. He did lead Oregon in receiving 2 times. Do you want to know my fun fact that makes Troy Franklin's season at Oregon more impressive?
Go ahead.
Tez Johnson, who actually ended up leading the team in receptions, but not in yards, transferred from Troy, but was basically Bo Nix's adopted brother. Tez, the guy who lined up opposite Troy Franklin, lived with Bo Nix. Like they're
Wow.
like basically brothers, right? Like they're I have
Well,
to go. That's a
given the
12.
age difference, it maybe son would be more appropriate.
It might be it's very good. But like You're literally playing football with your adopted brother. Like Bo Nix's parents come down from the sideline and like give Tez Johnson a hug before they go and find Bo. And Troy Franklin still leads the team in yards and in touchdowns. I mean, come on, dude. That's to me, that's a pretty good fun fact about this draft class.
Listen, we just allowed Rome Odunze steps up in the big games. We're allowing it. We're allowing that, out competing adopted brothers is
Well,
is now
that's what
allowed.
look, this is my job on the show. You're gonna bring the splash zone stats, and it's my job to bring the narratives.
I mean, I love the narrative. Like Troy Franklin, the big thing for me is weight. What does he weigh? Because Dane Brugler had him at I think a 179. He's listed.
To me, that looks high.
Oh no, he's listed at 187. So I've been really hoping.
Okay, he's not 187. He's he is not. I mean, you could just watch the games and be like, that dude is not weigh 187 pounds.
He has very skinny legs and a very lanky frame. He's like 6'3". Yeah, I would love if he could, be putting on weight right now. At least be, I mean, if he's below 180 with as lanky as he is, it's a little concerning, especially if it's for his early career production. Um, that's one of the things where like I am going to be taking Troy Franklin ahead of Keon Coleman in Dynasty. But I've actually been thinking like, maybe I should be a little bit more kind of on Coleman here in best ball where like if Coleman's got it, he's going to hit the ground running. Where Franklin
Yeah.
could be awesome
Oh,
and
that's
not hit
such a
the
good
ground running.
point, actually. Like, we're gonna know after like a month if Keon Coleman has it or not.
Exactly. Exactly. And Franklin could be like, you know,
He could be a
maybe
slow
year
burn.
two.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be a little bit of a slower burn. Kind of a classic second year breakout, put some weight on. Um, and he's got the speed. His route running supposedly very good. Um, I think he's going to test really well. He's got
Well, if you
acceleration
you
plus long
can't if you
speed.
can't accelerate at 178 pounds, then what are you doing here? I mean, the thing obviously that is so impressive about him was like the per target efficiency is also off the chart. His final year at Oregon, almost 3 yards per target with 33% of the receiving production at Oregon in a season where they were very good. That is another thing. It's like obviously it is easier to get a bunch of volume on a shitty college football team than it is to get a bunch of volume on a good college football team. Like there's a reason why we like SEC wide receivers, like
Yeah.
they've just had to beat harder competition.
Yeah, and he had 2.63 yards per route run, which is really good. Marvin Harrison was at 2.98, Malik Neighbors at 2.83. Um, Odunze, as I mentioned, was at 2.17. So Franklin's significantly better. Brian Thomas was only 1.95, Holman 1.87. So of these like 3-year guys, Franklin actually, from the efficiency, is up there with Harrison and Neighbors. The other thing is that mark was significantly better than the rest of his teammates. So that's one thing I've liked to look at over the years is like how big of a gap are we seeing with your yards per out run relative to your teammates, because yards per out run is going to be dictated by, to some extent by how good the offense is. And potentially are you just like playing in a great offense next to, other good players, and you're able to kind of just roll the competition, and everyone's efficient. But Franklin was really efficient and appears to have kind of stood out as like the clear best guy in his offense, which is generally what we see from really good players. He was especially good in 2023 in the efficiency. His overall production over the course of his career wasn't ideal, but a really good yards after catch player, which I think is important to note given the size. Like he's not just like I mentioned yesterday that Tez Walker kind of looks a little Justin Huntery to me out there. And
Oh
and is
my God. Justin Next, you're gonna bring up Derek Rogers, dude.
One of my first articles on Rotoviz was about Derek Rogers and how he was free.
How funny is it, by the way, looking back on how we argued about all those guys, and Cordarrelle Patterson is still in the NFL?
I know. But he also completely busted. That's what's wild.
Frame of reference. If the Vikings would have opened their third eye and realized he was a running back right away,
I
he
know.
probably would not have. He probably would have been great.
And honestly, he's one of the best kick returners in the history of the NFL.
No, he's the best. He's the best.
You're right. He's the best.
Yeah, he's the
best kick returner. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're right.
Returner in general, he's still up there, but yeah.
Right. So, yeah. So Tez Walker does remind me of Justin Hunter a little bit. And you got yards after catch issues there, right? It's kind of Connor was talking about this too. It's like he's kind of, he's fast, but he's not great with the ball in his hands. Franklin was really good with the ball in his hands. So
yes,
if you're looking at your skinny wide receiver red flags, at least he's really good after the catch. Super efficient. He played on the outside. So, kind of a traditional wide receiver. The weight's still, I think, a red flag, but maybe we're kind of Will Fuller. You'll hear his comps. I think Trevor Sikkema had Christian Watson as potential comp, which we would have been more excited about.
God, any Will Fuller comp is just like, sign me the fuck up. I miss that guy every day.
I mean, I do too. So
okay, I want to talk about, since we're talking about the University of Texas, we talked about Brooks, we talked about Worthy, we talked about A.D. Mitchell. How about Jatavian Sanders? I feel like it's a little bit under the radar how good of a receiving prospect he was, just because of the presence of Brock Bowers. But 2022, 21% dominator rating. Now his dominator rating fell last season, but I think that's because Mitchell transferred in. Mitchell was at Georgia before and then transferred in 2023. But I am pretty into Jatavian Sanders, and I expect that he is going to test pretty well. I also believe he was playing through an injury at the end of the 2023 season. But in this offense with two guys who are being considered, potentially first round picks. I mean, he was third on the team in receptions, actually had more receptions than another wide receiver who's probably going to get drafted in Jordan Whittington. I'm pretty into Jatavian Sanders.
It's a two-man tight end class, and I think it's just Bowers and Sanders. And Sanders, if he tests well, will be up there with Sam Laporta and Michael Mayer in my stuff from last year as the best tight end. Like, he would have probably come out as the best tight end in last year's class if he tests really well, which is part of the appeal, that he's supposed to be really athletic. So, it's very plausible, but obviously you want to see that. But, even if he doesn't, I think he's definitely pretty interesting. The problem is, right, it really is just those two guys. Jaheim Bell was kind of on my radar a little bit, but I think he's kind of more of like an H-back type. And almost like got kind of like running back usage. So he's not as interesting to me ultimately. I think for best ball purposes, where like, you don't want to be drafting guys who just get buried. Then you're right. You don't want your Schoonmakers. So I really am just kind of keeping it right now to Bowers and Jatavian Sanders, but I like Sanders. I think he's very affordable in best ball drafts. I imagine he goes up quite a bit in Dynasty once the draft capital comes in. I mean, he's probably going to go in the second round, but there's not a lot of buzz on him right now. So, if you're doing like a startup or something at the moment, I think he's like a pretty big target.
If I was gonna tout one guy who could backdoor his way into what was the Browns tight end name?
Njoku?
No, Barnage. Gary
Oh,
Barnage.
Gary
It
Barnage.
would be the K-State tight end Ben Sano. He had 6 touchdown
Okay.
receptions his final season. I mean, he played in that crazy run heavy scheme, but he scored 6 touchdowns on 49 receptions. Actually, led K-State in receiving his final year. I bet he gets drafted ahead of Jaheim Bell actually, because he's like a kind of decent route runner, and like obviously to play tight end at K-State, you have to be like a huge run blocker. Although he probably runs into the Darnell Washington problem where he literally never runs a route because all the dude does is block. I actually think the Steelers are just going to convert him
Do
into a
you?
tackle. Yeah, I think
Oh
so.
man.
He ran like 9 routes the whole fucking year.
I mean, Arthur Smith figuring out a way to get the most out of Darnell Washington, but like at the expense of George Pickens is very on brand. But yeah,
I sign me up. I actually, you know what? Whatever. I don't care about George Pickens. Like whatever. I'll sacrifice George Pickens to get 1 season of 80 receptions for a 6'6", 250-pound mountain of a human being.
all right, I'm in too, actually. Let's do it, Arthur.
Okay. Let's talk about some of our sleepers. I'll let you go first. Who is a guy who is, well outside the top 150 best ball picks right now, kind of a second, third rounder style guy, a wide receiver who you are into?
Well, so the guy I'm not that into is Lad McConkey, and I get it. He seems fine, but like I think we can arbitrage Lad McConkey in a couple different ways. One of them is Roman Wilson, who's coming
Yeah.
up boards. He's, also a 4-year guy, but if anything, seems like I mean, he had a very strong Senior Bowl. So maybe we're just in like kind of the peak of kind of like his draft capital projection. But at this point, I think I feel better about where he's going to go in the NFL draft than McConkey. They're both probably drafted pretty close to each other, but Roman Wilson could sneak in at like pick 32 or something. You're seeing that in mocks. He's probably a slot. Uh, he's not the biggest guy. He's listed at 192, 6 foot, 192. So, you know, he's like as far as the ceiling goes, not like super high ceiling, but McConkey is going to be like a slot with, maybe a
Lad
bit more.
McConkey is 210-pound Hunter Renfrow.
Yeah, although he weighed in at the Senior Bowl at 187.
Oh shit. I thought he was, I don't know
So
why. I thought he was big. Okay, so he's just like a Hunter Renfrow then.
he's on a Renfro, but I think the idea is he has more long speed. I think people are excited about that. So, but yeah, I mean, if I can kind of go get that slot receiver, but good draft capital profile cheaper with Wilson, I want that. I also have been taking Ricky Pearsall as a similar arbitrage slot receiver play. Um, he's, kind of like lunch pail slot receiver, traditional slot receiver, though. Like he can go out and play in 11 personnel. You don't have to like scheme him up stuff. He has a lot of red flags, but he's probably going to have decent draft capital, and he is free in these best ball drafts. So those are two guys as I'm kind of like not drafting McConkey right now. He just seems a little too expensive, where I'm like, well, let me get basically the same profile for much less expensive.
I mean, you know what? I bet McConkey actually probably scores like a decent amount of PPR points as a rookie. Like it's because some team's going to take him in the third round and use him immediately. But he just like will not. He has like no 250 PPR point seasons in his range of outcomes. Like I just
Yeah.
don't even think he can. He's like a decent, good, productive player for a really good college team, but just because he will always be a slot guy, and he's not Keenan Allen or Amon-Ra St. Brown or even he
Yeah.
doesn't even have the same kind of, if we're sticking to wide receiver comps, he doesn't have that same quick twitch, short area, turn around, spin, whatever that like an Edelman had. Edelman like would get the
Right.
ball and then change direction and then change direction, and you wouldn't even be able to tackle him. He doesn't play. He kind of play. The reason why I thought he was bigger is he kind of plays bigger. He plays like in one direction. Like you get him going across the field on a slant, and he's good at catching it and turning it up the field, but very little change of direction.
Yeah. And he's got for his career a 16% dominator rating. He did not come out early either. And his yardage share for his career 16% as well. Peaked at 20% in 2022 for dominator rating. Didn't even get close to having a breakout season. Just not a guy I want to really pay anything for. What I'm hoping actually is that like he goes to the Panthers in the second round and becomes free. Because I agree with you. I think he can have a pretty productive rookie season, even if the ceiling's low. If he's totally free, that could be pretty helpful. If I have to pay anything for him, I think I'm out.
Yeah. All right. My guy, I mean, he's going to be pretty popular. My guess is a lot of the nerds are going to be on this fella, but it is Malachi Corley, who played in that, the air raid system at Western Kentucky. He is bigger than Tank Dell, but this is like the Tank Dell corollary of the guy who played at a group of 5 instead of Power 5 school, was a 4-year player, but was just insanely productive while there. He led them in receiving. So I do like to do this because his outright dominator rating is not that impressive because he did play at a team that threw so often. So 31%, 26% career, 21% dominator rating. But his final season, he had 984 yards. Second on the team was 513. In 2022, he had almost 1,300 yards. Second on the team was 872 for a guy who actually transferred to an SEC school and played very well the year after. So what you see with these air raid schools is that because they throw so often to so many players, that it kind of makes the dominator rating stuff a little wonky, basically, because they're running so often, or they're running so much less often, and they've got, they distribute 700 fucking pass attempts in 13 games or whatever.
Yeah, it's the same way that Stephen Hill had a 45% dominator rating with 820 yards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he was at Georgia Tech. They didn't throw. Yeah.
Yeah. Western Kentucky Hilltoppers, famously the school where Bailey Zappi, you're the all-time touchdown leader in college football history. Bailey Zappi was his quarterback when he was a sophomore. But
wait, Davis. I'm sorry, I'm stuck on Stephen Hill now. He had 291 receiving yards in 10 games.
Yeah.
In 2010. 291 yards. What was his dominator rating?
I probably know this. Like at some point I probably could have recited, I think 55% off the top
No, it was 35%. 30 in 10 games. He had 291 yards. That was good for 35% of the team's offense. He also only had 3 touchdowns. So this was not a touchdown-driven dominator rating.
Not a touchdown-driven dominator rating. Yeah. Yeah. So Corley is kind of my pet project at wide receiver right now, and we are joined 90 minutes into the program by
well, I didn't see any of the messages, but then I saw you guys messaging, and I was like, at first I was like, you guys are surely done, and then I was like, no, it's you guys are probably still talking. Why don't I join for the last 15 minutes?
Yeah, Jacob is live. I think he's in a sauna right now.
No, I'm off this week. I traveled home to Winnipeg, so I'm in my parents' basement, which has wood paneling.
So you're in a log cabin. You're in a log cabin in Manitoba right now.
Basically, yeah. So I had not been checking Discord for the last 2 days. So I saw the exchange of messages. Did not sleep through an alarm this time. Just simply was not aware that there was a podcast happening. And then figured I'd come in for a verse at the end. It's from the sauna.
Well, we're talking about Stephen Hill, so we're right on track.
Nice. Davis brings up Stephen Hill like more than any person alive, I think.
Well, he was kind of my introduction to the fallacy of rate statistics, right? Of using percentage statistics and not adjusting them for the context, because we were just talking about Malachi Corley, which is the opposite corollary, which is his dominator ratings are suppressed by the fact that he played for a team that threw the ball about 750 times a year. I was saying that Corley is kind of my pet project wide receiver right now. He is the guy that, you're on the clock at the 210. All the good players are kind of gone. You're like, you know what? I want Malachi Corley on my team.
Nice.
Well, I wanted to bring up a guy, and I'm I'm glad, Jacob, you're here for this, because I'm like desperate to get some additional context on Jacob Cowing, who I know is an older prospect.
Yeah, from Arizona.
Guy from Arizona. He kind of pops for me as like an old prospect. Very, productive over the course of his entire career. 30% career yardage share, 32% career dominator rating. Kind of interesting from an efficiency standpoint. Actually, really interesting. As an underclassman, he had 3.10 yards per route run. So, out there
UTEP,
being efficient.
right?
I think so, because he transferred to Arizona, I think just for this past year.
Yeah. I think he was a Conference USA guy for 3 years. I think he transferred to Arizona in his 4th year and then played 2 years at Arizona, I believe.
He got a little bit of rushing, only like 100 career rushing yards, so not like a ton, but he gets used a little bit like that. He's 175 pounds. That's the big red flag.
Guy.
He's 5'11",
right?
Yeah, slot guy. But like, dude, he looks so fast to me. Like, I think he's gonna test really well. I take him occasionally in the very last round of best ball drafts, kind of a dynasty like dart throw, 3rd, 4th, maybe even 5th round rookie pick. But I think it's definitely someone to have on the radar.
What's interesting about him is that at Arizona, he was used as like a slot underneath guy. Like he had under 10 yards per reception his final season. But then you look at his UTEP, and he's like up over 18 yards per reception.
He was almost 20 yards per catch his final year at UTEP.
Wow.
And I'll just be honest, like it's February. I have not watched much Jacob Cowing, and I don't know like the specifics of his ADOT. So I can't really speak to how much of that 20 yard per reception UTEP pace was him breaking a million yak plays versus if he was getting more downfield looks compared to sort of the underneath profile that he had at Arizona. Maybe you have more of that, Pat, but that was one thing that I noted is interesting with his profile.
His ADOT over his career isn't that low. Hang on, let me pull up his like career ADOT by year. But yeah, I mean, I think that the idea is he's a slot guy, but he's got a lot of speed. And you hope he makes it into the 3rd round or early 4th, and has a path to playing time right away. Let's see, where's the ADOT? The ADOT.
We're all gonna be so accepting of 170-pound wide receivers after watching Tank Dell just completely torch the NFL for 8 games.
Well,
like it's
that's
like,
what it is for me.
And old wide receivers, right after we had like the Puka's an old transfer, Rashee Rice a little older, Tank Dell's old and small. So
yeah, no. So he was a deep threat early in his career. 2019. So he played 3 years at UTEP, 14.8 ADOT, 17.3, 15.2. Transfers to Arizona for 2 years actually. ADOTs of 8.4 and then 6.7. So he kind of like got progressively more shallow over the course of his career, but he was really efficient at UTEP. Yards per route run of 2.21, 2.94, 3.82 in his final year there. So that deep threat role, maybe, it's gonna be tough for it to fully transfer given that he's that small. And he was kind of like the Jalen Hyatt deep threat from the slot. He didn't play outside a lot at any point in his career. I think he maxed at 32% of his snaps out wide. So yeah, he's kind of like, I mean, it's probably more of a college archetype, like super skinny slot deep threat, but I don't know. Worth considering at least.
For sure.
I am into it. I think that's probably a guy that I'll end up being pretty interested in. Let's bring up a running back since we mostly are doing sleeper wide receivers and it's a pretty mid running back class. How about Dylan Johnson?
I've been doing while I was ignoring you guys in the Discord unknowingly. I was just grinding running back film all day yesterday, so I'm pumped.
Have you been watching have you watched Dylan Johnson yet? Because
I've watched a bit of him, and I think that he's off my board because he wears a hoodie indoors. It's ridiculous. Like he wears a hoodie.
That's the most Canadian. It's the most Canadian thing I've ever heard.
What are you saying, Jacob?
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Yeah, but you don't have a football jersey over top of this. For the listeners, Pat is like currently channeling.
I really wish I did. I really wish I could just
like he's like putting a hoodie on. He like currently looks like he's like Justin Timberlake right now. But that his fashion aesthetic is ridiculous. But the guy lives for contact. You have to respect that.
I mean, he had
like Dylan Johnson.
173 receptions in 4 seasons. He transferred from Mississippi State. I don't even know. It sounds like he didn't love his old coach who passed away, Mike Leach. Sounds like there was not a lot of love lost between the two of those guys. And then he immediately becomes the lead running back in this Washington Huskies team that kind of takes the nation by storm and is like just fits right in as both a rusher and a receiver. And for whatever it's worth, the film bros seem very high on Dylan Johnson. Seems like they're like, you know, just kind of, it was a confluence of the offense not really fitting him at Mississippi State and the offense really fitting him at Washington. So he's a guy, I have been taking him in the big board like super late.
Honestly, I hadn't heard that much about him. Like when I'm looking at, you know, projected draft capital and stuff, I hadn't really seen him.
He also has medical something. I think his foot maybe. Like he does, like people are worried he's not gonna have clean medicals.
I don't know if you guys talked I assume you guys talked about the top running backs in the class already a bunch. So I'll give you maybe a deeper name. But has anybody brought up Isaiah Davis yet today?
No. That's deep. That's very deep.
Okay, so my like this would be my deep sleeper from South Dakota State. I mean, he might get, I don't even know if he's going to get drafted, but this would be, if you want to, I'm pacing my sleeper to the fact that I'm picturing that I'm in a podcast that's already been going on for an hour and 40 minutes. So based off of that,
so you're already you're the UDFAs now, which is fair.
Like I'm assuming that you guys have already talked plenty about like Benson and Brooks and Braelon Allen and like all of those guys, right? So
we kind of skipped Brooks, actually. We didn't talk about him that much other than to say I liked him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to talk about I'd be more than happy to talk about Jonathon Brooks, probably more than Isaiah Davis. But for my super sleeper, Davis had over 230 carries each of the last 2 years, 1,451 yards, 1,578 yards. Also has over 2 years, over 20 receptions, over 6 feet, over 220 pounds. And it's always hard to tell how fast the guy is when they play at South Dakota State because you don't know if he's fast or everyone else is slow. But has like legitimate like home run tape in terms of actually running through guys. Like I think he navigates people well. The production profile is fantastic. So that would be one super sleeper that I hope he gets draft capital. Yeah, I'd love to talk about Brooks. I think I have him as my RB2 right now in that class.
Oh, he's my RB1. Who do you have him?
I like Benson's my 1 at the moment.
Interesting.
But it's very close between him and Brooks. Who do you have?
Like Benson
where do you have Benson? To be clear, like I haven't gotten quite as deep into the stats, so this is mostly a film grade for me. Like but for me with Brooks, my concern with him is just I don't know that he's ever going to be a goal line back. I think he looks pretty brutal in short yardage situations, and he has like an upright running style. He's 6 feet, 199, at least according to whatever, and that looks about accurate to me when I watch him. And he's kind of a glider, which is nice when he's like on the perimeter. Like he often catches guys at an angle, and so he's able to kind of shift around them and evade a lot more tackles than you'd think for a guy who I don't think runs with a lot of power. But like I posted a clip of it last night, but just him getting 3 straight carries at the 1 versus Oklahoma and just being like effortlessly stood up. And I find that he runs pretty high and he's pretty thin. And so that's my only red flag with him is I don't know if he's ever going to be a goal line carry guy. But yeah, curious what you love about his profile. He's a really natural receiver too.
I had seen him listed at 207, so I was a little bit more optimistic there in terms of the body side or the
we'll see at the combine, right?
Yeah, we'll see. Although we won't see him work out, unfortunately, because of the ACL tear, which is you definitely want.
Yeah.
You want to be factoring that in, getting a discount there. But what I like about him is the versatility. He rated well as a breakaway runner. He was very elusive. He was able to break tackles while handling a big workload, and he had 1.46 yards per route run, which isn't like awesome, but it's pretty good. And so it's like he kind of has a few different outs, I think, to a valuable rushing profile. He kind of fits more like I had him kind of rated as like a late first dynasty prospect. where he would slot in last year very clearly behind Bijan, obviously, but also behind Gibbs, but ahead of everybody else is kind of the, and I have him ahead of Benson, who I have as more of like a second round rookie pick type.
Yeah, I think that was, go for it.
Well, and I just am saying I'm team Braelon Allen over Brooks.
Oh
unless,
man, Davis.
Unless
Oh
Brooks
no, Davis.
Well, Brooks might end up being like a second round pick, and Braelon Allen.
Braelon Allen is one of my least favorite running backs I've ever watched.
Oh,
I knew he would be. I didn't even have to bring you on.
But Jacob, do you know he's 19?
I appreciate that, because this was like a Jason Tatum bit for forever, where like one of the announcers would always be like, and he's only 19, and like Celtics fans still say that. I wish Sam was on the pod for that. So it reminded me of that. I appreciate that about Braelon Allen. But yeah, I watched 6 games of his yesterday, and my notes are almost entirely piss poor. I don't know, man. I don't see it with that guy. If he lands in like a perfect spot where all he has to do is just run downhill, like a Gus Edwards type situation, and then I could see it, and like he will probably get goal line work. He's a very large man.
But that's what's gonna happen. You got to understand that these are causal events. Like some team that wants Devin Achane is not going to draft Braelon Allen. A team that wants a sledgehammer is going to say, "Look, I would like to go to the NFL draft and purchase a sledgehammer, please," and they will have their like. The Kansas City Chiefs are not going to take Braelon Allen. The Washington Commanders probably are going to take Braelon Allen.
But they already have a sledgehammer that is more like, they have like a sledgehammer that can also do some other things.
It's a used sledgehammer though. This is a fresh off the shelf
sledgehammer.
This is a 19-year-old saran wrap still in the original packaging sledgehammer.
A collectible sledgehammer.
A collectible sledgehammer.
They'll go way up in my rankings once I factor in all the production stuff, because his like profile looks very nice on at least like the raw production side of it is quite good. So credit to him on that. We'll see. Maybe better in best ball. Like I can see the use case of a Braelon Allen, right? I can see how he fits into a team.
When the Tennessee Titans take Braelon Allen at the 38th pick in the second round, you're gonna have to capitulate so hard.
Maybe at the 168th pick of the whatever round.
Yeah, Allen gets quite a bit of boost in my stuff for size and production. Like he's very big and he was very productive.
He is very, very, very productive. I've seen people. My one qualm is I've seen some people bring up that he got used more in the passing game this year, and like he kind of did. Like he caught some dump offs and everything. Horrendous pass protector. Like just throws his arms at people, leaning over.
It's all right. We want our guys running routes.
So I wouldn't read into the. Yeah, I just think I wouldn't read much into the passing game stuff. I think he's a big guy who's going to score some touchdowns, and on the right team, he could like Jordan Howard his way to like 200 carries, 10 touchdowns, 800 yards.
I loved Jordan Howard. I loved Jordan. I loved like rookie Jordan Howard. So it's fine by me. Yeah.
0.74 yards per route run. So I completely
But
agree.
He was 19. He's got so much more to learn about the intricacies of running routes, dude.
But he's like not, but he's like, he doesn't change direction. So like, I don't think he can run routes. Like he only goes one way.
He's only been a running back for 3 years. He was a linebacker in high school. He's
I can't believe
so
you're on the linebacker guy now.
That I really believe. I'll tell you what, that checks out.
I mean, honestly, it sounds tongue in cheek, but I really mean it now. Like, why can't he just have a Tyler Algier rookie season where some team is just like, fuck it. You're getting 233 useless, empty calories carries, but you're just going to rack up the volume on him.
I mean, I'm not going to say you can't.
No, I mean, and Algier really didn't do that much until the end. And then they were like, let's just feed this guy. And then he was pretty good. So, and then they immediately drafted a better running back, unfortunately. But
do you guys like Corum at all?
I don't like Corum at all.
I don't, but I just know he's going to be the starting Chargers running back in 8 months. Right. So like, I've just made my peace.
I'm forcing myself to take him occasionally.
His stat profile is pretty garbo. I like watching him. I just think he always makes the right decisions. I appreciate that. I think he's like a smaller Brian Robinson. I can see Kyren Williams upside, but without the passing game. Like just Kyren Williams, but only as a runner.
Great.
Which is less appealing, for sure.
Part-time Kyron Williams sounds awesome.
Well, it's a 2024 running back class, Pat. Beggars can't be choosers.
Have you gotten to Simon Vaki yet, Corain?
No.
Okay. You guys gotta go. You guys gotta go look this guy up. This is right in Crane's alley. He is a combo safety running back from the University of Utah. I think he had some.
This guy isn't even on the PFF big board.
Oh,
we already talked
Sion Vaki.
Sion. Okay.
Yeah. So the first hit when I just Googled him, because full disclosure, I've never heard of this person in my life. The first hit is Sion Vaki, Utah Ute safety. And then the first sentence is Sion Vaki takes a screen pass 53 yards for a touchdown. So Google's very confused as to what he does.
He had 53 touches and 5 touchdowns and 37 tackles his final year at Utah with 1 interception and 2 sacks. I mean, Crane, this guy was built in a lab for you to be in on. This is like Tyler Algier, but like legit feisty.
I can't believe you're just owning me on all the converted defensive players I've never heard of. Oh man,
he's gonna own IDP leagues. He's like the absolute poverty version of Travis Hunter.
Well, I think he's got to test well, right? I mean, he would not have declared early if he was not gonna test well, right? I mean, that's got to be the deal with this guy is he's gonna like crush the combine.
What position is he planning to play in the NFL?
Whatever.
He better be playing running back if we're talking about him.
I mean, I think he probably running back. I would assume.
Probably running back. We need them to play running back, Davis.
Just to be clear, Davis chuckled when I brought up South Dakota State running back, and Davis is now replying by bringing up probably running backs.
Yeah, your running back is 209 on the PFF big board, so acceptable. He is at least listed.
And to be clear, he plays running back. For sure. He's definitely going to play running back.
Well, you know what? We're going to find out at the combine because he will have to declare his positional group. He'll have to do drills with his group. So we're going to find out if he does it with the defensive backs or the running backs.
What a sweat. What a sweat.
What do you make more money doing in the NFL, being a safety or running back? I guess a safety.
Probably
right?
safety.
Safety. Yeah, he should definitely play safety if he can.
All right. Well, forget that who was that guy, Jacob, on the Patriots 2 years ago? Marcus Jones, who they started playing on offense.
Yeah, the kick returner, and they gave him that screen pass and took one of the house against the Bills on Thursday night. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. We've uncovered a guy 3 years from now you're going to be pissed off wasn't listed as a skill position player in a Thursday night showdown for the Buffalo Bills.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Oh man.
They can't say we don't go deep on this show.
My one question I guess my one real question that I missed is just out of 10, how excited are you guys about the 2024 rookie class?
Like a 9.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'd probably be an 8, just because the running back class is
it gets
weak.
It gets a little sketchy after 7, right? You have 101 through 107, you love your life, and then you have 108, and you're hoping that JJ McCarthy goes 6th overall.
But the thing is that
more guys.
I like Brian Thomas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I like him too. Yeah.
And I honestly like Troy Franklin a lot, so you could
the Bills, the Cowboys, the Chiefs, and the Bengals are all going to be in position to take wide receivers early.
Thomas, Franklin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to me where it gets a little shaky is 110, right? Because if you're looking, you get the 3 quarterbacks, Harrison,
but it's gonna be 4.
Odunze.
McCarthy's.
You're right, McCarthy. Yeah, I don't love McCarthy though, but I mean he'll probably go ahead of 110 anyway. So
I don't love him. I don't love him, but if he's a top 10 NFL draft pick, then I love him at the 110.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think worst case it seems like he'll be 12th or 13th or something. So it's where we're sitting here today. That's kind of the buzz. So yeah, I think the drop off would be after that, like Keon Coleman or or your other receiver, basically, or do you go with the running back at that point?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. Like, there's probably going to be some running back that gets a good landing spot. It's just the weird part. Like, I think most people have Brooks as the top guy, and it's a hard sell for me to take an injured, like a severely injured dynasty running back early in the rookie draft, right? Like, in theory, the advantage of taking the running back is you get to plug and play them in your lineup kind of right away, and then it's a little tougher. But we'll see. I mean, hopefully some of these guys, like I expect we'll probably get what, 3, 4, 5 guys maybe come off in the third round. Maybe one of them sneaks into the late second.
I mean, it sounds like Brooks is still probably likely to go late second. Maybe he's third round with the injury, but Jatavion Sanders is a guy that I think we could ultimately be thinking about around that 110 range if he goes.
That's an interesting call. I like that call.
The Bills are one more primary slot tight end away from finding like a good offense. Like if they take Jatavion, you run out the 13 personnel of Khalil Shakir, Dawson Knox, Jatavion Sanders, and Dalton Kincaid. They're right on the precipice of getting where they want to go on an offense. So,
I want to bring up a couple more wide receivers because I mean what makes this class fun, in addition to there being legit high end quarterback guys, is that it goes really deep at wide receiver.
Yes.
Jermaine Burton is someone we haven't talked about.
Yeah.
He had a really strong final season at Alabama. I mean, we took John Mechie because he because he went to the school. It's like that's enough. So
and Burton went to both of the schools.
Yeah. So I mean, Burton, I think he had a over 30% dominator rating in his final year there. Yeah, 35% dominator rating at the University of Alabama in his final season. Yes, he's a 4-year guy. Didn't break out until his 4th year. Kind of classic red flag stuff. But he's like totally free. And I think one of these guys who's going to get buried in a really deep class. So he's someone that I've been taking a lot of in best ball, and also seems like very interesting if you're going to get him as like a 3rd, 4th round dynasty pick.
Agree. I will note, kind of, I caught on as you guys were talking about Corley and about the dominator rating being depressed because of being in this like pass first offense. Burton, a little bit of a different story where the dominator rating looks high. The 8 touchdowns are carrying some water there, and the 20.5 yards per reception, which is good, and owns is helping out there too. Only 3 receptions per game in that final season, so never really been like a high volume target earning guy, more of a downfield touchdown threat. But yeah, interesting. Also, I mean, Alabama just probably not what we're used to seeing in their wide receiver core lately in terms of the quality of teammate you'd usually see him beating out to post that kind of stats at Alabama versus the quality of teammate he beat out this year. But he is interesting. Also, like, great recruit pedigree on Burton for whatever that's worth, but just never seemed to really put it together, and then kind of made a comeback this year. I expect him to test like really well, I would guess.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts on the top of the quarterback class? We kind of basically, I'm not as into Williams as like I think everyone else, but you kind of have to take him number 1, I think, just to make sure you have some. But May, I was glowing about May, and a little shakier on Daniels because of the size. Do you have any thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, I like Drake May a lot, and I've been surprised to see the talk about him kind of being potentially a faller from 2 to 3, and not just in fantasy circles, but like the rumors about him not even being drafted 2 in real life surprised me. I've seen people bring up some ball placement and accuracy concerns, but just from like a profile perspective, he really checks every box we would want, right? Like, super mobile guy who came in, started pretty early, has been good every time that he's been starting. 3-year declare, multi-year starter. Like, it's just everything that we kind of want out of a quarterback prospect with a bunch of rushing appeal for fantasy. So I am legitimately very excited about Drake May for sure. I'd become, slightly less excited if the rumored fall actually happens, but assuming he goes 2 or 3 overall, pretty pumped about him.
I almost hope he falls. Like, if he goes to, one of the mocks I saw projected the Falcons to come up to 5 and take him. Like, sick. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't care if he falls to 5.
The fear would be that he falls to 3 and then doesn't fall further than 3.
Yes, that is the fear, and it's a real fear.
I mean, that's going to be something we're going to have to negotiate, right? Like, chances are the Patriots, unless they take like Joe Alt and do us all a favor, chances are that one of May, Daniels, or Harrison is stepping on that New England landmine, and that'll be something we all have to kind of figure out how much to weigh in just playing in that hostile environment. I agree with you with Daniels, and it's tough because I've been a Daniels guy for like years in the Devy world, just always saying like, hey, if this guy could put it together, like he's such an incredibly dynamic runner, like why wouldn't you draft this guy in like the 8th round of the Devy draft? Because he's just needs to get a little bit better throwing the ball, and then we're talking about a 1st round rookie pick, and now it's gone almost too far. Where, yeah, like the age concerns me. It concerns me a lot that he was pretty terrible his 2nd and 3rd year starting, and that it took until a transfer and a move to an offense with probably 2 first-round wide receivers, potentially 1 top 5 receiver, to really put up those stats. I just from like watching him a lot, I would say that big pluses, incredible touch on the deep ball. I think he has a really live arm and just, absolutely electric, dynamic runner. Haven't seen him throw very well in the middle of the field. I don't think he processes well, which is pretty concerning because he's been a 5-year starter. So I don't know that is going to change a whole lot. And a concerningly high sack and scramble rate, which I'd also say wherever he does land would be a concern for the receivers. Like I think you're looking at kind of that Fields scenario where your targets per route run is bad because 25% of the routes don't result in a pass attempt with a Jayden Daniels offense, where it's just like compared to most of the rest of the quarterback, at least some of the stuff that I've looked at. And I mean, Pat, you look into it, I think, deeper than I have, but where the sack rate's high, the scramble rate's high. So that would be my concern with me, is a 5-year starter who both just watching and from the statistical profile, I don't think processes the field well at all. That's a pretty big red flag in my opinion.
Yeah, we almost need him to go to New England where they don't have receivers and we can just bet on the rushing. Like that's
right.
Him turning in a Cam Newton-esque goal line rushing season, but then also bringing, like 2nd and 8 runs as well. Like, because Cam was just such a goal line rusher in New England.
Here's the thing about the goal line rushing is he's built like me. Like he's like, I mean, Pat's met me in person. Like he knows what I'm describing. Like I'm very tall, but I'm not wide. Like I would not want to run me at the goal line. And like Jayden Daniels is like a very tall, lanky, skinny quarterback. Like I can't even really think of a comparison. Like it's like his shoulders are like very close together. Like it's all like Trevor Lawrence is kind of lanky and skinny, but Daniels is almost more compressed and he's smaller. And so I think he'll run a lot between the 20s, but I don't know that he's going to be a goal line rusher. I don't know that he's built like solid enough to be a big goal line rusher.
Yeah, I mean, it's Lamar-esque that way, where, I don't think but he doesn't avoid hits like Lamar. That's very clear.
No, he loves getting hit.
Yeah, I don't love that. But he's, if Lamar at the goal line, we see Gus Edwards a lot. As good as Lamar is as a rusher, it's more between the 20s. I definitely think that's going to be the case with Daniels. Like he looks lanky too. It's not like I would be very surprised if he was even, if he was 220, I would be kind of shocked.
There's no way, man. There's no shot that guy's 220. I don't care what he's listed at. Like we'll see when he comes in at the combine, but to me, he looks closer to like 6'3", like 6. Like I'm seeing him 6'4", 210.
He's probably 205.
I don't know. I'll put it this way. I'm 6'4", 185. I feel like I'm looking in a mirror every time I turn the tape. So,
do you think he can't be sub 200?
I gotta get Jakob. I gotta get Jakob in the gym, dude. That is unacceptable. We gotta get you to 200 pounds, Jakob. I can't associate with that.
You're not working out with Troy Franklin, are you? Because I need that guy to put on weight.
I'm working out with Xavier Worthy.
Oh no.
Brutal.
Do you have any interest? We didn't talk at all about McCarthy, who
because he's a fucking mystery box.
I'm very interested. I'm extremely interested.
Okay, I'm not that interested from a best ball perspective because I'm like, this guy's probably low volume, right? Like he doesn't have that great of a fantasy profile. No one talks about the fact that he's listed at like 203, Dane Brugler had him at 195 in his rankings yesterday. Like, why don't we care about that? I mean, we just did the Bryce Young thing. Oh God, he's going to be sub 200, but JJ McCarthy like probably is sub 200. Young weighed in above 200 at the combine, and that was the last we heard about the weight. Never was a problem again. So if he's 205 or whatever, like that's still not great. I know he's young; he could put on weight as he goes, but
at least he doesn't have height issues, right? Like Young, also, I think it was about height, not just weight. McCarthy's 6'3".
That's true. Yeah, he's listed 6'3". So, but
they kind of similarly built to Daniels in terms of taller, skinnier.
But I think the fact that he's skinny, it just adds to like this guy's not going to be very mobile. And there's not really much reason to suspect he'll be that mobile, given his college stats and stuff. So it's like, what is he really bringing as like a fantasy quarterback?
He's Brock Purdy, but he goes in the first round of the NFL draft. That's what you're looking at.
I think Ryan Tannehill level mobility is what I foresee from him. Tannehill's kind of a similar build, although a little bit taller. He's listed 6'4", 217. I wouldn't be surprised if McCarthy filled out to like 210 at some point. Like, he's only like a 21-year-old kid right now. Is he 21?
Yeah, his college rushing is actually a lot better than I thought.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's based also like he's not dropping back very much, but he's really mobile. Like there's a play that sticks out in my mind against Ohio State, where there was a 4th and 1. They run him on a naked bootleg, and it's screwed. And it's just him one-on-one versus a linebacker to get it. And he like shakes him against an Ohio State linebacker, gets it easily, picks up another 10, 15 yards. Like I think he's a very functional playmaker.
Okay.
He's not Lamar Jackson, but like he has wheels, and he has a pretty live arm. And I think he fits perfectly into the dominant structure of what teams are doing. So I'm not very excited about him from a best ball perspective. And I don't know that I'm even that excited about him from a long-term dynasty perspective. But I think he's pretty safe in that I just can see him fitting into an NFL offense. Like I assume where he's going to get drafted is probably going to be like a play action heavy Shanahan type scheme, or at least I hope that's who takes him.
Vikings and Broncos seem like the most likely right now.
Broncos, yeah.
Broncos is such a perfect fit, man. Like he gets in that Sean Payton scheme. He's going to drop back 32 times a game. He's going to hand it off a bunch. It's going to be play action, and he's just going to rip like slants and dig routes over the middle. And he throws seeds, and he plays in the structure of the offense. Like I think that he's going to be a successful. I don't know. Like it depends on your view, but like I think he's like a Goff with mobility, where he like has a really live arm like Jared Goff has, and he's going to be able to make the right decisions, but then he can scoot a little bit. Like maybe like that peak, the 2 years of the Brian Tannehill with Arthur Smith, like those two, like 2019, 2020, like I could see McCarthy doing that. I don't see like a super high ceiling offense. I don't think he's going to be running like some air raid, spread it out, drop back 40 times. But I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he was like a high-end QB2, low-end QB1 who played for a long time in the NFL. It's just hard. I get that he's a mystery box because they threw like 22 times a game or whatever. But I think he has the tools to succeed in an NFL offense. And I don't think it'll cost that much in Dynasty. Like I suspect he's going to go like I don't think he's cracking the top 7 regardless. So I think he's going to go 1-8, 1-9, 1-10 in rookie drafts. And maybe he's the guy who we do this pod 2 years from now and say, why is this guy going in the 3rd round? He's so overrated. But that's still a massive payoff from your initial investment.
Yeah, I think he's probably like a much better Superflex Dynasty pick than best ball right now.
100% agree.
You have to worry about not job security, but when he gets on the field. Like not that he's going to get benched, but when does he start? If he goes to Denver, potentially right away. But I think it'll be a little bit low ceiling out there. But like guy who's definitely going to be a starter next year and the year after is always very valued in Superflex. Like those guys, we lose like a couple of those guys a year, and we're gonna like, even if he's Mac Jones with job security, if Mac Jones was definitely gonna be a starter for 2 years, like that alone you'd be like, I hate it.
God,
but I
who's gonna start a quarterback for the Patriots next year?
Jayden Daniels.
I'm thinking Jayden Daniels or Drake May.
God, if Drake May ends up in the Patriots,
that will test Pat's love for Drake May.
I'm drafting through it, baby. I'm drafting through it.
Drafting through it.
They got Van Pelt now. They're gonna throw every down like they did with Flacco.
That's the hope. The nice thing is you're probably getting Drake May at a very nice price. Like Drake May on the Patriots. This presumes that then Daniels goes too. So Daniels is definitely going ahead of him in rookie drafts in this world. Caleb's obviously going ahead of him in rookie drafts. Marvin's probably going ahead of him in rookie drafts. I wouldn't be surprised to see the odd rookie drafts.
Yeah, that's going to
like,
end up with me
Neighbors.
taking Drake. I'm going to have like 50%
Maybe
Drake
I'll take
May.
Bowers. And then you're going to be like getting May at like 1.5, 1.6. Like I'm good with that action. Absolutely.
I will join Dynasty. I'm trying desperately to get my leagues down. I will join Dynasty leagues to draft Drake May at 1.5, 1.6. That's
wow.
Come on.
Well, give me the quick pitch. I know you probably already gave it to the listeners, so maybe you can give me the 30-second version. But what gives you so much excitement with him?
The big thing is that he was very good with the deep ball. Big time throws on 20+ yard passes. The rate of those per attempt, the rate of those per game. Really, really strong, like up there with pretty much anybody ever. And that, the aggressive mindset and the ability to do it, plus size, plus mobility, plus he was also a willing scrambler, so he's not just kind of like someone who got designed rushes in college. He's going to create on his own. He also is maybe not ideal, but pretty good at playing within structure. He avoided sacks much better, than like a Justin Fields. Like he was kind of more on Justin Herbert. Like he'll take some sacks, but it's not like a huge problem. He was like pretty good looking at some of the first read stuff. Like he looks like he plays pretty well within structure. He can create outside of structure. He doesn't like kind of, with Caleb Williams, is like he gets a little bit off the rails sometimes out of structure. It can be a problem. And if the NFL cared about that, I would too. I don't think they do. So I'm kind of like, whatever. He's going to get a long leash, so it probably doesn't matter. But May, I think is going to execute fairly well, as in addition to providing playmaking and mobility.
Yeah, I agree. I like him a lot.
I mean, he's going to throw deep. He's going to run. He's probably going to be the second quarterback drafted. He's at least coming in with one good wide receiver. Pat objected to me classifying Jahan Dotson as a good wide receiver. They'll have another pick.
It seems like a very, what has he ever done to be a good wide receiver at this point?
Scored some
No, I believe in my heart and that he's a good wide receiver, but I don't want to tell anybody that because I can't like defend that take. I just kind of feel it.
There's been a lot of that. There's been a lot of that.
He has a place in my heart, right in the same ventricle as Elijah Moore, who I also feel in my heart is good.
Elijah Moore, come on. Elijah Moore is definitively good. He just needed a good quarterback.
Definitively?
Yeah, I don't know about definitively. I also do feel in my heart that Elijah Moore is good. But so now I understand the Jahan Dotson thing.
If you feel it in your heart, how can it be false?
Yeah, I also, by the way, feel in my heart that Rashad Bateman is good. These three guys all live in the same little part of my heart.
You need to see a psychiatrist about that.
Yeah, Bateman, buddy, it's not happening. Yeah. He's given every opportunity. But I do feel in my heart that Braelon Burks is good.
Oh, I don't feel that. I don't feel that at all, actually.
Well, let me tell you, if you like Braelon Burks, Pat, buying opportunity of a lifetime because he is free in any format right now. He is totally. Imagine what you could get his NFL all-day debut moment for right now. I mean, probably
I think nothing. All of them are going for about $3. So,
what I've discovered, by the way, is that this feeling in your heart that we all have for various players, it's called your priors. That's
it's called bias, I think. Is it?
Yeah.
All right, should we get out of here?
Out there, someone thinks Dorial Green Beckham is good in their heart.
Yeah,
no, Dorial Green Beckham sucks.
One guy we didn't really talk about Bowers. I feel like we should at least give the people a little bit of why. Like we mentioned that he's gonna be
reverse. It's gonna be reverse Kyle Pitts. You're gonna watch him in the NFL and you're gonna be like, I don't really understand how he's always so open. He's gonna get every easy screen, every easy 7-yard slant. He's gonna get both Laporta targets and seam targets. It's gonna be infuriating, obviously, as all of us are Kyle Pitts bag defenders, to just watch this guy go top 10 overall in a sleepwalk into the easiest 97 target rookie tight end season you've ever seen. Meanwhile, Kyle Pitts is out there running fucking cardio with Jonnu Smith.
Well, my elevator pitch for Brock Bowers that I would give in 30 seconds is that Georgia can recruit basically any 5-star athlete they want in any position. They always have seemingly 3 NFL quality running backs on their roster at any given time. And they chose for 3 years to run as a legitimate part of their offense, jet sweeps to their tight end. And those jet sweeps were often successful. And so that's basically my pitch for Brock Bowers. Is he's so good that Georgia, the University of Georgia, was like, we will make you not only a featured part of our passing game, featured part of our red zone package, but just like a legitimate every game part of our run game. He's very athletic. He's very good. He's gonna kill. I love the guy.
Yeah. So the big difference between him and Kyle Pitts, I think, is that he's not like an elite off the charts run blocker, but he's pretty good. And he gets comparisons to Kittle, and is going to be involved in that style of offense where he's getting used on play action and he's being used after the catch stuff, which is honestly a better profile than the big wide receiver profile for Pitts, because the thing with being a big wide receiver who plays tight end is that pretty much immediately that's about that tight end eligibility also comes with a 20% route rate doc, right? Great wide receivers are going to run. Their route participation is going to be maybe 15%. They might be at 95%.
Yeah.
Just by nature of being a tight end, you're going to be at like 80%. So then it's like with Pitts specifically, when is he coming off the field? Sometimes it's actually kind of some of the bigger personnel stuff because he is just a wide receiver. And so he's not out there to run block on play action stuff around the goal line or just straight runs, which don't matter as much, but you want him to be out there and actually get some of that upside around the goal line where we actually see tight ends catch a lot of the touchdowns on play action passes. Pitts had a career run blocking grade of 44, which is first percentile for tight ends. And Bowers was at 75, which is like very good. TJ Hawkinson was at 71. So he's not like the best run blocker ever. But if the idea is like this dude can come out and just like play NFL tight end, and then in addition to that, he's bringing really strong yards after catch and receiving ability, like I just think like that's more likely to translate. And if he tests well at the combine, for what it's worth, because tight end is difficult to project, but he'll be the best tight end prospect in my stuff by a pretty decent margin, as long as he tests well.
Yeah, I can't imagine he won't test well. He might have. People might balk at the size and the weight at the combine, but he'll test really well. I mean, I don't know what it'll look like adjusted, because like most tight ends are like 250 pounds. I'm not entirely convinced he's even 230. So I don't know what like his like size adjusted metrics will be, but his like raw numbers I expect will be great. Like I don't know, what would you expect him to run? I'd expect him to run like pretty close to 4.5 flat.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, he looks like a World of Warcraft player, so like that kind of makes me more into him. That photo of him next to Gronk was like kind of an all-timer.
Yeah,
it was.
He doesn't look
like knowing
if he came
that
into
that guy.
He doesn't look like a professional athlete.
Like knowing that guy was at the University of Georgia next to every great athlete that graduated from high school in the United States of America in the last 4 years, and that they all in the locker room were like, you know what? We need to get this fucking guy the ball more often. Is like, all right, you can't argue with that.
Well, does the weight concern you? Because the big counter to everything I just said about he'll be out there run blocking and all that.
No, that's the plus. Being 230 pounds is the plus. It means he blocks like 10 times a game.
Well, but you want them run blocking, because if it's a run, there's no missed opportunity, and if it's not a run, it was a fake run, and you want them out there. So I do think most elite, like if you're out there pass blocking, you probably suck. Like most great tight end, like even Kittle doesn't pass block.
Yeah.
So I actually do. It's not great if the weight causes him to be trusted less as a blocker. It's bad.
I totally agree with that. And I don't know. Like I buy that he was able to make do in college and that he played in the SEC. So I think he'll probably be able to make do somewhat in the NFL. Like, it would concern me more if he played in like a fake conference and it was like, okay, you could block well against, the Pac-12 defensive ends. But against the SEC defensive ends, like, they're probably roughly comparable in size and strength to like low-end NFL players. Like, I feel like it's probably manageable. I agree with you. You definitely want them to be able to block. This is like the same argument that I had with, I think it was like Kyle, I forget how to pronounce his last name, Fords on Twitter, about like running back pass protection, where it was like, no, you don't want your running backs pass blocking, but you do want them to be able to pass block, because if they're able to pass block, then they get to be on the field on passing plays,
Right.
and then they also get to run more routes. I think it's somewhat of a concern. People can feel free to ignore this point because Kyle Pitts exists, but like, I would really hope that whatever team drafts him, hopefully very highly, knows who he is and has a plan. Like, I just hope that comes to fruition, and that he doesn't go to a team with Arthur Smith at head coach who like doesn't
Good
have a
luck
plan.
with that.
Do we
It would be
deserve
great.
that? Do we deserve for a tight end to be an all-world tight end to be used properly? I mean, we already got in this lifetime Jimmy Graham, Travis Kelce, and Rob Gronkowski. Do we really deserve better? I'm not sure.
Shane Steichen's going to use this guy exactly how anybody would want. I promise you. I have my jersey ready.
Yeah. He's gonna get drafted by the Titans, brother, and he's gonna get 16 targets as a rookie,
Don't like that.
earning his stripes.
Hey, it's not the old Titans. I get on board with the new Titans, man. They're going to be throwing a little bit more.
Oh yeah, that's right. I like this guy they hired.
Yeah, Callahan. Yeah,
I'm in on
His dad is like an OG, like he's like in the OG Shanahan tree. Like, if we're doing the tree,
he's the dumbest team in America guy.
Yeah.
He's he was the head coach of the Raiders. I had a long vendetta against Bill Callahan because when John Gruden was traded to the Bucks, I was a Raiders fan at this time because Rich Gannon went to the University of Delaware, which is where I'm from.
Nice.
And I just thought it was so fun that they had like all these really old, like Jerry Rice, Tim Brown, Rich Gannon. They're all like 40 years old. And so Gruden's off in Tampa Bay. Bill Callahan runs the exact same Gruden offense. Then they get to the Super Bowl against Gruden, and they, Gannon throws for like 5 interceptions because they knew all the plays. Like, you have to change the plays if you're going against the guy who made the plays. Anyway, it didn't work. But he's generally seen as the best offensive line coach, I think, like ever. So getting him on the staff would, it's big. Is he on the staff?
Yes.
He's on the staff.
Confirmed?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, he's on the staff.
Good.
My only thing with the Titans is if we're just talking about Will Levis, I have a lot of undeserved optimism about him. But then as soon as we transition to talking about weapons of Will Levis, I have only pessimism about Will Levis. So
Hopkins was fine last year. Hopkins was pretty good.
He was all right. It was like better in best ball. Like, I remember my Sunday morning routine of going through all my Hopkins Dynasty leagues and trying to figure out whether he was going to score 3 or 30 that day was less fun. But I'm sure in best ball it was more fun.
Yeah, but I mean, if they throw a little bit more, that should even it out. He had over 2 yards per route run.
Yeah.
If they throw more, I think he's honestly, I have a big bag of him in the early best ball stuff. He goes, I think, like 2 rounds too late.
I take him. I take him or Kyle Pitts. I'm going down with the ship. I'm seeing tight end 7 Brock Bowers, tight end 12 Kyle Pitts, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to keep
tight end 12.
Yeah.
Fuck, man. Like, all right, I guess we're getting even, or we're trying.
That's what you think, I thought round 18, Clyde Edwards. Actually, I did get even on Clyde because he had that week 15 game. So in the end, you can always get even on your guys.
I thought I was getting even on Kyle Pitts last year. Like, I thought that last year was like, wow, we get Kyle Pitts in round 7, and now when did we get him? What is it, round 9, 10 or something? I haven't been drafted.
Yeah, no, he's like barely in the top 100.
Yeah.
Hopkins is more like a little over round underpriced, I think, not 2 rounds. But yeah, he goes to pick 76, 77.
I'm into that. I remember the one best ball draft I did do, it got to like round 4, and I was like, wow, these wide receivers, it's getting rough.
It dries up quick, yeah. You
got to just zero RB every draft. You got to take one running back through 8 rounds. Then just you're just taking.
Well, and then you get
Trey Benson
Harris in the 8th, and you're feeling pretty good about that.
Exactly.
Who in the 8th?
Najee Harris.
You know what, dude? I'm taking
Unironic,
Najee
yes.
Harris some. I'm taking him some. I take
Okay, good. I
Warren.
was trial ballooning it because I'm secretly into it, but I wanted to preserve the right to be like, LOL, that was a joke if I got roasted for it. But
No,
but
I'm
pretty
taking
into
some
it.
of them. I mean, I take Warren ahead of him a lot, because he's the better player in the same backfield. But
Yeah, and you know who's their coach, Pat?
yeah, a guy who refuses to play first round picks, Jacob.
Oh, I thought it was a guy who refused to play good players.
Well, this is the argument. This is the argument: is does he hate playing good players, or does he hate playing players with draft capital?
That's true. It's hard to say.
It is hard to say. I'm
He
taking
just
them both.
hates anyone.
I'm
He
taking
just
them
hates anyone who generates explosive plays, unless Tyler Algier happens to slip past the defense. Like that's it.
Well, but he hates Algier more than anyone because he's like, "Great job, Tyler." Anyway, this guy's gonna be taking your job.
Kind of.
Why?
But not at the goal line. Only for the first 90.
But not as much as everyone would like.
None of that.
And also
the
we'll keep
whole
Patterson
Falcons,
involved sometimes.
the whole Falcons thing never made any sense. No part of it
No,
at all.
no.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
I feel good about the Falcons. I like Raheem Morris. I like Zach Robinson.
Well, I feel
I'm
good about
buying
them
in.
now.
I know. Well, no, I felt horrible
Correct.
about them before. Obviously, they ruined my life. But like, I feel good about this season, which makes me feel trepidation.
This is one thing we're now getting completely off the rails, but is in the best ball stuff, I'm desperately trying to figure out who their quarterback is and what even we can hope for.
JJ McCarthy.
Might be
Yes.
JJ McCarthy.
Kirk Cousins is the dream, I think. They would
Yeah.
love to get him.
Kirk is the absolute dream. I just think he probably ends up back in Minnesota.
Probably.
Yeah.
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 But it'd be
All
great.
right.
I would love him in Atlanta. And I would be in on McCarthy.
I
There.
no joke have a hard out that I didn't think we would get. I didn't think we would get anywhere close to this hard out. Pat and I started recording this show 2 hours ago, so I didn't actually think that this was a realistic hard out, but I do actually have a hard out. So everyone, thank you for, I don't even know, a 2.5 hour show, I guess, here.
I
so
showed up
thank
90
you.
minutes late to a podcast I didn't know was happening. Still got a firm hour in.
Yeah, halfway through it turned out.
Absolutely, absolutely classic. We will continue to be going through these rookies. Obviously, when we get to the combine, that's a ton more information for us. You can get all of Pat's Dynasty content, a legendary upside. My Dynasty rankings are on patreon.com/takecast. Jacob's are on Thinking About Thinking, and we will be back with you guys soon.